have provided only policy statements has provided only 4.6 billion for the Electoral Commission's operation in 2020 and 2021. And then according to The Nation, we're told about the Ruto turf that holding meetings in Eldoret could have seen Deputy President William Ruto's allies dominate. And another factor that's coming in is the Uhuru factor, whereby they're telling us push to have the president attend Eldoret and Nakuru rallies forced organizers to settle for one. So they're having various angles to this particular story, but obviously I think the biggest is indeed that the fact that there's no cash for a referendum, and I think this is no surprise. I didn't expect there to have been a budget for a referendum, given that we haven't even decided that this is what we're going to have.
This has always been an interesting perspective when you consider, for instance, that Israel, who recently had an election, it's the third election they've had within a period of, say, 12 months.
Yes.
So this one of ours, where something like a referendum,
cannot afford it.
Well, they say there's no money, but that's what they've said. Let's pause and wait.
And see.
Yes,
you might be surprised that some magical funds will appear like Jack and the Beanstalk's golden eggs or whatever. And there will be money to have this referendum. But interestingly enough, the statistics that we've seen, Kenya's elections are the most expensive in the world, not Africa.
Wow.
Not
well,
in this hemisphere,
if you
world.
look at, for instance, the amount that is spent vis-a-vis the number of people who actually participate in the process.
In the process, right.
Yes, we do very well there.
Very, very well.
Leading.
So one would expect they will be flawless, but obviously we know what happens, yeah?
Right. But the way you want to look at things now, I mean, everybody's pushing for the BBI.
Initiative.
Okay? Popular initiative, in this case being the BBI.
Yeah.
But
and of course, one of the only ways to then get it through is via referendum. So this is why I'm telling you, magical funds will appear from somewhere like manna from heaven. And this referendum will happen.
Well, does that imply that there's something other than what's in the document that would be pushing for this particular...
This is an aha moment.
Which we have all had.
Yeah, because if it was just about what's in the document, then perhaps it would be too expensive.
It's never quite what it is that you see. It never really is.
Right.
We will report one thing, you will hear one thing, you will listen to one thing, but it's never really quite what you hear. In fact, a statement such as this one, as it's presented in the papers, the first question you ask is, okay, what's really going on?
Exactly, yeah.
Not that there's no money. That is not even an important discussion. What is actually going on here? Yes.
Okay.
The underbelly is hardly seen, and I guess that's why it's called the underbelly. Until somebody turns over or something turns over, that's when you really see what is underneath. And I think we will be privy to this in the very near future.
These things will just unfold as usual, and we'll see them. But I hope that Kenyans' memories are elongated to the point that they can go back to the point where we're being told there's no cash and then see the patterns. Because I think one thing we fail ourselves is one area where we fail ourselves, we quickly forget that we were told in the press, or there's a leader that says this, and then the reality unfolds in a completely opposite way, but then we just let it happen.
Do you think we believe the things we hear or read about all the time?
Well, I don't.
We don't.
No. I don't think we regard them with any kind of, credibility at first.
Really.
But given that we don't, why don't we ever do or say or start a conversation about...
Our thinking has been that Kenyans will focus on what matters to them at that time.
Right.
This can be consigned to the corner of entertainment. Okay? But what is it that's actually going to help them solve this real problem of ensuring you have food?
Right.
Ensuring that you have adequate sustenance for your children, you are able to wake up and move. There are key things that people focus on. And oddly enough, health isn't even a priority.
Right, yeah.
Really, it is about, if we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of it, it's putting food on the table and being able to get from one day to the next.
That's it.
So would I feed myself and my children?
You will
kind of thing?
postpone that illness. You will suspend any care-seeking behavior because there's a cost attached to it.
It's interesting because by the time people actually get to hospital and they ask the question, you say, actually, I've had this pain or I've had this thing for a very long time, but I kind of shelved it. I wasn't able to pay any attention because there were other things. And that other thing is really sustenance.
Absolutely.
To be able to live from day to day. That's what it has been.
That's why we don't really focus too much on these shenanigans, as I would call them. I like to call them.
And the calling of them is appropriate. Because if you think about it, sometimes it's like there's a group of people somewhere who, in pursuit of what concerns them and what is of interest to them, they figure, how do we keep the rest of our countrymen busy? So that they actually don't focus on what, and we've, in the same station, we've said that we, the media, sometimes play right into their hands.
We play into it.
And we encourage it. Yes.
So, if you want to look at the US, for example, that's how they created Hollywood. They created Hollywood to give the citizens something to think about while they built the country. So here's this shiny thing. Pay some attention to it while we work on the rest. And so people were, inundated, distracted with all of that, while they set the country in motion, set things in governance in place, and by the time you come back, from your days of what was going on, it's in place. You're not going to ask questions.
Or a preoccupation. Have you not seen how it is that very many Kenyans will discuss these soap operas
to the detail?
So-and-so you did
to the detail.
You know what so-and-so said? If you're caught in the middle, you'll be wondering, what is we talking about?
It's actually not real.
Yes, it's that Mexican soap that I never watch. Or but they take it. Do you know why?
Seriously. It's a distraction.
Enables you to travel from this world of
reality
to that make-believe one.
And would you call it a sort of propaganda?
Drug.
It's a drug. It's for the masses,
because it's a drug.
Hollywood worked so well to a point where the whole world loved
today.
The United States.
Till today.
Yeah.
But
till today.
It is in the past tense.
It's still now.
It's still going on,
Present continuous tense.
Yes.
And remember, every part of the globe came up with their own version.
Yes.
Nollywood.
Bollywood.
Riverwood.
Tollywood.
Now you're just making up stuff.
There's a Machakos one.
I know there's a Machawood.
Mollywood.
No. Okay.
Right,
The front page of the Standard, of course. Clash of the Giants. And this is, again, another headline that we see. You ask yourself, okay, clash of whom? Tensions between the DPP, Nurdin Haji, got my consonants mixed up there, and DCI boss George Kinoti boil over in court after prosecutor disowns charges drafted by investigators against the KPA boss, prompting the magistrate to free the suspects. Now, you're going to ask the question that, is this a clash between the two gentlemen or a clash between their offices? Of course, they're the face of these offices. I don't think the two gentlemen had a tiff, but okay. A rift is emerging between the DCI and the State Prosecutor's Office over delayed case files. Officials at the DCI claim that they have files dating back to April last year still lying at the DPP's office. Of course, this is another story, but then linked to what has been happening with Manduku, of course, the KPA boss. Differences between the Director of Public Prosecutions and his Directorate of Criminal Investigations counterpart played out in the open after they failed to agree on charges against Kenya Ports Authority boss Daniel Manduku. The drama witnessed in a Nairobi court yesterday following the arrest and arraignment of Manduku signaled a fallout between Haji and Kinoti, whose initial unity of purpose in the early days of the reinvigorated war on corruption projected a formidable force in the fight against crime.
Okay, I don't understand.
It is being reported as a setback in the war against corruption. And I don't see how.
Okay,
just agree.
Yeah,
and then bring it to the floor.
Let me ask the question: whose job is it to take cases to court? It's not the DCI.
It's not the DCI.
It's not, for sure.
Yes. So how did this case get to court? Because the way it's being reported is as though the DCI did the investigation and then
handed it over,
took the case to
court. Yeah.
And if that is the case, then one would say that there's a disagreement here. Someone seems to have waded into someone's turf.
Yeah.
But the DCI doesn't take. Do they take cases to court?
No, they don't.
Yes.
What they
That's the prosecutor's job.
They prefer them then for prosecution, and the only office through which this can be established is the office of the DPP.
Yeah, but then the DPP refused to register the charge sheet. So this means that it is the DPP that's supposed to get it together and figure out what is permissible or what he can actually present before court before they get to a point where they're arguing on a national stage.
Yes, but the DPP's office has to give the okay that it's prosecutable.
This is the thing, and this is where the crux was, because the prosecutor said, we also have to investigate this file. Basically, we've seen that there has been a rush to take it to court, but we say that they should be freed because we've not had an opportunity to look through the file and do investigations on our part, which they are mandated to do by law. They have to do this. So this is what the contention is. But then to now come and say that the war against corruption has taken has been hit with a major setback, I think it's a bit sensationalist.
Is a threat to graft war. I mean, it's a bit out there.
This is us. This is us being mischievous.
We're looking for stories to, fill the paper.
But on the other hand, there's some reality to it. Consider these officers that we speak of represent their departments.
They do.
Yes. So when we say that these departments seem to be at loggerhead, representatively, they are.
They are.
Yes.
And there's a face.
Yes.
So you could then now pass it on to the two.
These gentlemen who are being quoted in the Standard, we read their names, but they're faceless. We don't know them.
Yeah, the faces that are here are completely
Their bosses
different.
are the ones we know. Yes.
Right. Well, we're going to look into this in depth and talk about the war on corruption, of course, in a bit. But right now, let's take a look at the weather and see what's going on in the country. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in the Situation Room. We'll be back in a moment.
.9 Spice FM.
In Nairobi today at 18 degrees. Showers expected later with highs of 26 and lows of 16. In Nakuru at 16 degrees. Showers expected as well. Highs of 27 and lows of 15. It's going to be a clear morning in Eldoret at 13 degrees. Showers and thunderstorms expected with highs of 23 and lows of 13. We're going to see thunderstorms in Kisumu as well. Highs of 28 and lows of 19. Currently with partly cloudy conditions. It's cloudy in Mombasa and rain will follow with highs of 32 and lows of 27. At 28 degrees in Malindi, showers will come through in the afternoon with highs of 32. It's 16 degrees in Nyeri and will be a wet day as well with highs of 25 and lows of 14. Stepping on to East Africa at 26 degrees, thunderstorms being experienced in Dar es Salaam already with highs of 31 and lows of 24. Kampala, it's cloudy through. Thunderstorms will come through later with highs of 24 and lows of 20. In Johannesburg at 13 degrees, clear skies this morning with highs of 23 and lows of 12. Into West Africa, 28 degrees in Lagos, highs of 35 and lows of 27, partly cloudy conditions through the day. In London at 3 degrees, it's clear skies and rain expected later with highs of 8 and lows of 3. In Paris, clear skies at 5 degrees. Rain will come through in the afternoon with highs of 8 and lows of 5. Rounding things out in New York, light rain showers being experienced at 11 degrees with highs of 13 and lows of 7.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
Kenya's biggest conversation. Trix Ingata, and this is a live coverage broadcast with KTN Morning Express. And in studio, I am with Siti Muga and Ndu Oko. And of course, you're watching us also on KTN News. And today, we're taking a look at what's making headlines as per usual. And we were on that big story that is promising that there is a clash of the giants, tension between the DPP, Nuruddin Haji, and DCI, George Kinoti, boiling over in court after prosecutors disowned charges drafted by investigators against KPA boss, prompting magistrates to free suspects. Now, I would like to point out that while we have said that this might be wild assertion that there is a breakdown in the war on corruption owing to this particular case, that a lot of these cases do fall apart at a point where they get to court with evidence or material that is not sufficient. So could that be a concern that should be taken seriously when dealing with such a huge case. You know what KPA is to the country. So
it is. But if we look at what was even reported in the papers yesterday, there's clear evidence that certain things were wrong. That certain procurement procedures were not followed, and even the procurement process itself was flawed. That, according to the papers, is clear. But remember, if you read today's report on page 4, this has been simmering. It isn't something that began with the advent of the Manduku case, because it is reported that the DCI's office has claimed that the DPP has had cases pending from April last year.
Right.
And there was a feeling that they are delaying these cases. And the Manduku one seemed to be an important one. Again, remember, high profile.
Yes.
So they felt this is something that they need to fast track, because if they were to take it through the channels that they've been taking them through, it looks like the thing that they were guaranteed was a delay. So this is a debate that's going to go on, and I'm sure we are going to be furnished with reports of what else has been happening in this particular sphere. But what is certain is this. There are so many cases of graft in this country. So many. And in so many departments.
Right.
That sometimes I think at one level you're spoiled for choice. Who do we prosecute and who do we? Number one. Two, there are already many cases that are already in court, awaiting hearing. So the discussion around this should probably center on what do you do to ensure that these cases are speeded up, but not at the risk of actually losing what is paramount to this. Not just the process, but that the due process of law is followed, and that these people who've been accused are actually given their correct time of hearing and their day in court.
Yes.
Now, if you listen to these complaints, it's not very dissimilar to the ones that the DPP's office has had against the judiciary, where they say that they take cases to the judiciary and they are delayed.
And they're delayed in this.
Yes, and if you talk to the judiciary, they'll tell you, there are judicial processes that must be followed. Yes.
Even if they take years.
Yes, they must be followed. Then the judiciary will push back and say, but we don't have funding to do these things. We have brought this number of cases.
We have a backlog.
And we have a backlog. And there are those who ask, but yes, we've set up special courts before to deal with certain things. Then if you have high-profile cases, why don't you actually just set up special courts that deal with those with these things? Because they can.
Yeah.
We didn't always have, or if we had it, it was understated, a court for judicial review. Meaning, if you have a case that you need to sort of like fast track, you take to that court because they will look at what the law states and tell you, this is where you stand, you're right or wrong. And it's fairly fast. So again, you could ask, is it that these state officers do not understand where certain cases should be taken? Because you've had cases where a case goes to a court, the court says, no, we're not handling this case. You take it to that other court. Or if it's in another court, please make sure that it's managed in that other court.
I think we also see a situation unfolding where these two officers feel the heartbeat of the nation, in the sense that they're looking for these convictions to happen.
For sure.
And in some cases, you'll find that injection of fervor comes with, let's take this forward as fast as we can. And in some cases, humanly speaking, they may forget that, due process has to be followed.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, and this is what we see playing out here. As far as they're concerned, from the officers of the DCI, they had everything that they needed. You might want to say it's not likely that they would forget that this needs to then go through the office of the DPP, but this is what they see. As far as they knew, they had everything that they needed. We'll be looking at this more in depth later on, but as we look at other stories that are making headlines in the country and around the world, firm faulted for tricking in quotes, the state to buy medical kit. A consulting firm that advised the Ministry of Health to lease multi-billion medical equipment has been put on the spot for misleading the government. City, I know you want to have your way at this, but just hold on. Strategic Partnership Association Infosuv East Africa Limited, that was picked through a restricted tender in a consortium with audit firm PKF, carried out a value for money assessment that informed the ministry's choice for the Managed Equipment Service Program. Yesterday, the firm was hard-pressed to explain how it submitted value for money assessment report without doing physical verification of health facilities in the counties. So we have a situation that is clear now. You suggest equipment that is needed in health facilities around the countries. However, you did not go to these counties and see what facilities they had in place for which this equipment then could now fit. You kind of just did a blanket report and said, I think we're going to stick an X-ray machine in Laikipia. We're going to have, a kidney, a dialysis machine somewhere in Marsabit, like, as opposed to actually going and seeing this is what we needed. So according to the state, they were tricked into this and they really didn't know what was going on, top from bottom. And the firm now has been faulted.
How exactly were they tricked?
They were tricked now because they were told that this is what you need and this is what we're going to bring to you.
Who tells who what you need?
This firm, which was hired through a tender process to be consultative and also advisory in terms of then what needed to be bought. They were the ones who went through this tender process and they were the ones who were supposed to make suggestions, which they did, and it was accepted by the state.
And without doing
due diligence.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
That minor little detail. Without doing due diligence in terms of what was actually needed per county, going and visiting and seeing, collating the data.
You don't even need to visit the county. Just ask them.
Ask them what you need. And we know that these county officials know what they need.
But
the governor of Laikipia told us that what are they suffering from mostly? Heart disease. And they see a lot of cardiovascular illness is what they suffer from.
Yes, they know.
Nyeri, we saw that it is cancer and diabetes that they suffer from. Makweni were told something, Machakos something else.
Kericho were told something else. Yes.
Yeah. We know this by just asking questions. It's possible
the
that
information actually
is
exists.
available. The information is available. Right? So the state was tricked, and we're talking about multi-billion shillings is what went down.
The way the story is put across, it would seem like the state is helpless against this suggestion. If these monies were paid, as is being asserted, or it was said this is what is supposed to be spent, if it has cost the state, if we have gone beyond the level of just talking about figures on paper, then they should just go the route of asset recovery. If you've tricked and we can, prove that you have cost the Mwananchi their money, then just do what needs to be done. I'm sure the law has provisions for that will ensure that they are ordered to give back money for badly spent, equipment, or even take it back or something.
It's interesting that you say this, but unfortunately, what we're dealing with now is leased equipment, so it doesn't belong to Kenya anyway. You're going to use it for a certain period of time. And the problem was that a lot of this equipment then sat in counties having not been used.
Because it wasn't needed.
It wasn't needed.
Yeah, so someone has to pay.
Either it wasn't neoperate or they did not have the personnel
First of
to
all,
operate
it wasn't
this
an open
machinery.
Tender. It was a restricted.
It was a restricted tender. So they knew who they were getting into business with.
They did.
What they were capable of doing, what they had the capacity then to deal with, they knew. But if we can look at interesting numbers, CT, before you go to that, the contract, which was originally 38 billion shillings, however, varied along the way, and the figure increased to 63 billion in 2017, with each of the 47 counties contributing to the program about 200 million per year, up from an initial 95 million annually. The National Treasury has proposed an allocation of 6.2 billion towards the program in 2020 and 2021 financial year, despite the ongoing probe. Again, for equipment that is leased, not owned by the state.
It's ridiculous.
You're spending this amount of money to lease equipment. Do we have a report showing what that equipment would actually cost you if we bought it?
If we bought it, yeah, so that we can justify.
Though, let me explain. Sometimes the leasing arrangement, depending on how you contract it, is not as bad as it seems or sounds. Because one, you get the equipment. If the contract allows, then any new equipment or a better version of it comes into being,
you can just swap.
Yes, you can access it. But there's also maintenance. Though even when you buy, there's also maintenance contract.
Sure.
But everything that has to do with ensuring that equipment works is not in your hands anymore. Leasing does have benefits. But the problem with what we're seeing here is not the leasing. The leasing per se, if someone doesn't provide us with an understanding of what this equipment would have actually cost, so that we can conjecture it with the leasing arrangement and the cost.
Right.
One, asking what the details of that leasing arrangement was. Because when you say that you did an evaluation, surely you, at the top of what you're considering is what it's going to benefit the receiver from, the end user, how it's going to benefit this person.
Right.
That has to be focused. And this is one of the queries that was raised. How do you hand over a report without doing due diligence of actually going to the very places where you are determining these machines should be used at. How?
Historical habits, because you never expect people to read this stuff anyway.
Oh, by the way.
Right? So
it
you
sounds
we expect them, but they don't. They never do. And then we are forever reading about them, the failures that come off of them not doing
these consulting firms. Even remember, the people who are being taken to task are not just this strategic partnership, but PFK as well. And unfortunately, auditing firms have, with time and space, continued to reduce in terms. Well, let me put it this way. The trust element with these organizations has reduced with time. Yes. If you look at some of the huge scandals we've had, not just in Kenya, but even abroad, somewhere along the line, you'll find that some huge accounting firm was involved. Yes.
Yep, that usually is the case.
If
Somebody
the name
who
Enron comes to mind,
just that little firm with a little scandal just the other day.
Yes. It will give you sufficient information that lends credence to what I'm saying. Okay. Yes.
We keep looking at what's going on in our world. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll come back and look at more of these stories after we take a look at the roads.
Spice FM.
Inbound Mombasa Road already Wednesday morning, definitely a mess. Very, very slowly. In some parts, not moving at all. An exercise in patience is what is required on Mombasa Road usually, but today you might want to crack that up a notch. Safari Park Hotel on Thika Road, jam started there as early as 5:30. You can use the service lanes because those are moving quite quickly as you try to get your way into the city centre. Using the eastern bypass is an option, getting off of Mombasa Road and off of Thika Road as well. The southern bypass is open, can be used right now, joining to Langata Road. That might take you a little bit of a shorter time than sitting in traffic. You will then join Langata Road where there's a little bit of traffic, but not so much. It's moving smoothly right about now. Coming off of Wayaki Way in Westlands and getting to the Westlands roundabout, not so bad either. Traffic is moving slowly, but it's moving all the same. We'll be in traffic hour in a short while. We'll let you know what it looks like. If you have any information about what you see or anything that you might experience that could slow down traffic or that we can let people know about, do let us know. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter or give us a call on 0719 012 600. It's Wednesday morning. Let's keep it moving.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
You are listening to The
94.4
Situation Room,
Spice
Kenya's biggest conversation. I'm Trix Ingado, and this is live coverage on KTN Morning Express. I am joining Siti Muga and Ndu Oko. You have a very good name.
Thank you.
Ndu Oko,
You.
very onomatopoeic. I just
yes,
wanted to slide that in.
Some linguistic gymnastics this morning. I love it.
Yeah. So you're taking a look at what's making headlines on across the Kenyan press, and the biggest story that has been making headlines worldwide even is the coronavirus. We are told on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation that coronavirus disrupts the workplace as firms send workers home, and there's also talk of a travel ban. I think that's what they meant. Now, we're being given steps to take to protect yourselves and when to use a mask, and also about traveling. Do not cancel your travel plans, practice hand hygiene, steer clear of heavily impacted areas by staying away from the latest from areas where it's said that there has been an outbreak. And obviously, if you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention and call in advance. Follow the directions of your local health authority. Now, I going back to something you said earlier on, this seems to have elicited more panic than many other outbreaks we've had in the world over. Talk of Ebola, SARS, H1N1. This one seems to be special. I don't know how, because if you look at the number of people that have been affected and compare it to the number of people that have died from it, it's literally a small percentage. But the media has carried this and gone crazy, even though we've seen worse. So is it justified?
That is a question that we've been asking from the time we read of it, because there almost seems to have been a push to sort of like discuss and look at the coronavirus and anything around it from a position of panic.
Yes.
Because the numbers shouldn't cause panic. So the question that we've asked here is, okay, so what is it about this virus that we don't know? Because if you look at the numbers, again, just the numbers. But let me stop there and use the principle we've been talking about. Let's not just believe what it is that we're reading and we're being told.
Yes.
Okay? Let's pause for a second and ask. Let me ask the question. Are these numbers correct? Simple question. And why I'm asking this question and why it's become pertinent today is because if you look at Japan, the numbers of those infected has leapfrogged.
Okay.
Even the numbers of those they claim dead has leapfrogged. And the Ministry of Health was reporting that if they look at the trajectory and what it is that they seem to foresee. Remember, Japan was criticized for the way they handled people who had been on the Diamond Princess and the way they've handled people who were infected and came into the country.
Yes.
But now they are estimating that it is possible that people who have been infected with the virus are in the tens of thousands. You know, we're no longer in the hundreds or the single-digit thousands. We're in the two-digit thousands. Okay? Now, when you have tens of thousands, this is Japan. It then, to me, would explain why China would risk its own economic processes because, yes, because they would have understood just how virulent it is and how dangerous it is. So they realize this one, you shut the country down.
But if you look at Japan and the way in which they do business generally, these are not, this is not a country to take any kind of risk per se. By the time they're saying children will not go to school.
They've taken it further. They're even suggesting that they will pay parents a certain
they pay
amount
parents $80
to stay home
and look after their children because they
yeah.
realize that the nanny stroke au pair service is not going to cut it. It would be too expensive. So if I hear what you're saying, CT, at this point, and looking at the way Japan has operated historically, by the time they're asking children to stay home, by the time they're ready to pay parents to stay home and take care of their children, the possibility of the numbers being higher than what we're actually aware of then is actually quite great.
Yeah.
It is.
Which
and
is
then
right.
we see these numbers double. They understand that it's actually getting a little bit more serious than, number one, they'd either bargained for or than the world has taken reality of.
Remember, being infected, you haven't heard of a situation where they are talking about voluntary testing as they did with HIV.
Yes.
So until you exhibit symptoms of having this disease, you could be walking around happily with the disease and passing it along with equal happiness.
Yeah.
This is true.
And you, let me call it ignorance. Happiness is not a good word here. But
unaware.
Blissfully ignorant.
Yes. Now, if you have such a situation, do you know how dangerous that is?
Quite the thing. And I think we ask ourselves, we had, problems with Ebola, SARS, MARS and such. The thing with Ebola as a disease, for example, is if you look at an individual with it, you would be able to know this person is sick.
Yeah.
With what we see presented with COVID-19 is that, just like you said, I could be walking around with this thing and it could be a common cold. I could be going about my business just fine.
It mimics other usual diseases that can be handled.
That is where the fear is. Because you're dealing with something that is not visibly clear.
Yeah.
And
you
by the
could
time
have
it's
it,
visible,
and by the time it's visible, it's too late.
But still,
this is the problem.
Compare Ebola and this.
You're comparing
honestly.
it. You're comparing it because of the terrible nature of the disease that is Ebola, right? You have people who are bleeding from all bodily orifices, all kinds of things that are going on. The optics are not good for Ebola.
Yeah.
Extremely unpleasant.
But the
scary thing, though, about coronavirus is that you can't see it, so you don't know. Something that could creep upon you is scarier than the thing that you see in the flesh.
Well, here's a conspiracy theory for you.
Here we go.
You
see, the coronavirus, look at where it started. It started in the East. This is a place that a lot of people do business from, and they travel around the world, and therefore the ease of it spreading to European, Western countries is quite easy. Ebola, on the other hand, was born and bred in Africa and was affecting Africans, and all they had to do was slap us with travel bans, and that was it. So I would imagine, given the nature and the places that this is affecting, the media would make a big deal out of it because of the likelihood, and the foreign media, that's what I'm talking about, because of the likelihood of them being affected. And therefore, like the way, if you look at how information travels, we also have to make it, a big deal, because this is seemingly a global event that's happening. As opposed to Ebola, that was affecting West African countries, and they would just have to tell their citizens, don't travel, don't go on vacation this year to, let's say, Sierra Leone or Congo or whatever other country was affected. And so it is less of a risk to certain countries that have more circulation in terms of information distribution, as opposed to African countries that could be screaming at the top of their lungs about Ebola, but nobody really is.
And until
it could
now,
be an issue of flow of information.
If we're going with that conspiracy, we still have the fact that nobody on the globe of Black African descent has been infected.
Yes.
Or at least there are no reports of such till today. And that is the question that now global experts are asking. How is it that a disease that is taking the world by storm, literally, has not affected anyone of Black African descent? And that now is the question.
Well, and there's a student that got healed.
Well, I've taken it further. I am questioning the reporting.
Right?
This is what I said. Yes. Has been reported.
I am questioning the reporting.
So you're leaning towards my theory, right?
Yes, I'm questioning the reporting, and I'm saying that the activity that we see around the coronavirus does not justify, or the numbers we see don't justify the activities, the near panic, near pandemonium activities we see around it.
So I hear you saying that the numbers could be much higher.
Yes, I am
what
saying,
is being reported.
And if I go by what it is that I was listening on BBC this morning regarding Japan and what they are saying about the numbers that they foresee, let me leave Japan for a second and leap across the Pacific and talk about the USA. They had one. They also leapfrogged.
Yes.
As of yesterday, 6 had died, not influenced.
Right.
And those who know how to profile such conditions are of the view that they estimate there could be 1,500. Now, how one gets to 1,500, contact, reporting, and detailing, and then projections. You say this is what is possible.
Yeah, and also, you know, in Italy, they hadn't even found, I don't know if they have already, patient 0 had not been found. So they were just
still
finding.
Haven't.
Yeah.
And the numbers in Italy have also leapfrogged.
Yeah. Iran
we have now cancelled flights from Italy.
Officially from Kenya.
We have now been informed that flights from Italy have been cancelled. Yes, that is the correct statement.
That is the correct statement.
Last we find,
of course, calls for honesty coming out of the big world bodies like the WHO and of course the United Nations. Calls for honesty then became rife over the last 2 days in terms of let people know the actual situation. And it's interesting that now 2 days later we see some of these numbers then, as you say, leapfrogging from the minimals that we see to now astounding numbers.
I have a question though. Is the leapfrogging because we have not figured out coronavirus yet, and it's something that looks similar to another affliction, so we haven't, and it's the first time it has transferred to a human being, so we cannot really trace how it mutates? Or is it because we are downplaying them to ease public tensions?
The pharmaceutical companies who President Trump called to the White House to discuss these matters said that the earliest that they might be able to have a vaccine,
6 months, 18 months, right? Yes.
Earliest. Because for it to actually be used on human beings, it has to go through various stages. And the stages, when you get to the animal stage, is when you look at perhaps how corrosive it might be to the system, how helpful, you don't just move and test. There's one advantage, though, that the testers and those who are researching have. There are drugs that not only have been tested on human beings, but human beings already use. Like you hear of chloroquine being able to effectively mitigate against the coronavirus.
Yeah.
You hear some cases of people saying it's ARVs. You hear other medication that people have used before. Those can be tested because they have been approved and human beings ingest them or use them.
Right.
It is known. Now, but beyond that, the realistic understanding is this. It's going to be a work in progress for a long time.
For sure.
But what people are also not being told, if indeed it is a virus as we state, many viruses that are related to influenza occur during cold
season.
Like winter.
Yeah.
So as the seasons change in some of these countries that are seeing these high numbers, then the possibility then that the numbers will drop in terms of those being
influenza or flu, as you call it, have been killing people in the West for the longest time possible. Okay, so
perhaps that's why Africa, while they're busy getting shocked, that's why we're not really affected.
It's much warmer in this neck of the woods.
So you're saying we have our malaria, so why should we worry about
that? No. We're just explaining why it's not affecting us as badly as the others.
Because this continent has also experienced colder weathers than it has for the longest time.
While it has winter types, Western,
true,
Scandinavian, Chinese winter.
No.
Yeah.
No snow, no ice, but we've also experienced extreme heat.
Yeah.
So the weather changes alone might not make us as safe as we'd like to think. No. We should treat this matter of the coronavirus with the same seriousness that everyone else around us seems to be treating it.
For sure.
Yes.
Of course, more issues that we need to look at with some seriousness. We'll keep looking at those as we come out of the short break. Now, you're in the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it here for more.
Broadcasting worldwide, Spice FM. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Intelligent humor and nostalgic music. Yeah! 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Continuing to look at what is going on. Not such good news.
Mornings done right. 94.
Food and Agriculture Organization FAO has warned of a fresh locust invasion as farmers in several counties count heavy losses. So it doesn't stop. The beat goes on. In its latest situational update on the dreaded pests, the United Nations agency expressed concern that a new generation of the insects is forming in some parts of Kenya as the country prepares for the planting season. This situation signals an impending food crisis that could threaten livelihoods, FAO said in a statement. So we see widespread swarm breeding continues in the northern and central counties, where an increasing number of hopper bands are forming. In the past few days, new generations of the immature swarms have started to form. And this is according to FAO in its new statement. The insects have been spotted between Berbera and Burao in Somalia. Larger swarms will soon settle in Marsabit and Turkana. So they can see this ahead of time. They know that they're coming. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya on Monday said that the government's strategy to deal with the invasion is on course, despite the impending new wave of the attack, especially from Somalia, where insecurity has made it impossible to eliminate the insects at their source. We have a roadmap on how to manage the locusts. It takes us up to June, according to Mr. Munya. The government is relying on aerial and ground spraying to eradicate mature locusts, their eggs, and nymphs.
It's the same gentleman who informed us that the locusts that we were seeing
with the grandpas and grandmas.
Yes, were the people who should actually be on a pension, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
And so they're on their way out, and this was something that we shouldn't worry about too much.
Oh, that was something we should really worry about.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if there's one thing that the locusts seem to understand is how to replace each other. and the replacement is by multiplication. One locust, one daddy-mummy combination of locusts.
Right.
Hey.
So as they tell us that it's impossible to eradicate them from their source, this is good news not for us, but Uganda or other countries that are expecting. What then do we do as we continue to lose our crops to, the locusts and their invasions? Because what are we doing? Clearly, the sprays that are happening so far aren't working. I don't know if the manufacturers had finally released.
If they actually found it. The issue was that it was not available. The insecticide, the
available
pesticide.
where exactly?
In Kenya.
In Kenya.
They were trying
even
to
the
get
manufacturing was
They
done.
were trying to get it from Australia, according to the last
Australia
report.
and some Asian country as well.
Trying to get it.
Yes. This is the problem, that there is a vacuum of information, because when we hear that a roadmap towards taking care of the problem is on course and is in place until June, this is where the problem lies.
Right.
In that you're not sharing succinct information about what is being done.
It's very vague.
Because we know
It's
exactly
deliberate.
what is happening with these locusts. We know what's going on. We know that, we've been told in the next few months it's going to get worse. They can be seen. There is a satellite. Hold on. The United Kingdom is tracking the locusts in collaboration with IGAD, an application center. The tracking is by a supercomputer in Gong. It analyzes
come on.
satellite data from the UK National Meteorological Department in London.
I really don't feel what they're doing to eradicate these locusts, because even the language that's being used in the articles, that Nakuru Agricultural Executive Immaculate Minor said her department had mobilized a monitoring and surveillance team and trained farmers on locust control and reporting.
This is the thing.
What
It's
do you mean?
it's a lot of big words.
And then after they report,
City normally says you're throwing words at the problem. And here we see an exemplification of the same yet again. And we've seen that it is clear that they're coming back. There's swarm breeding. Again, another wave of this is coming, likely to hit the counties that had been previously
Were we
hit.
informed of their departure?
Well, the thing is, they have a lifespan. They have a lifespan, 3 months, 100 days, they're dead. However, at the time that they were on their way to death, there was breeding.
they had left the eggs and
They
the
had
nest,
left their
as
children
the article is telling
behind.
us. Yeah, so
Right?
I mean,
And
so-
not behind in another country, in
Here.
Kenya.
And we have another swarm that then is
Yeah.
coming in through from Somalia. So
and on top of that, if you look at page 11 of the Daily Nation, you're told that decline in agriculture dense economic growth. And then to add to the locusts, we have latrines, fall armyworms are also being added to that as another problem that farmers are having to look forward to as they consider their harvests this year.
and this is planting season. I believe, and maybe you need to help me out on this one, but we're right in the middle of planting season, or at least getting to where the bread baskets of the country are. People are tilling the land now to be able to plant, and this is what we are dealing with at this time.
The little we are doing is the little that we will harvest, basically, if this carries on as it is.
In terms of gains, Munya, of course, still dismantles the fertilizer cartels to lower market prices. This is a fantastic step.
It has been reported that
farmers can now access fertilizer at affordable rates as the government promotes
How many
competition
times
in
have
the
we
industry.
heard that very line? He may be new to this ministry, but for the longest time, the government tells you cheap fertilizer is available. Farmers, we don't have fertilizer. Not even cheap fertilizer. We don't have fertilizers. We are waiting for the fertilizer. So until we have a corresponding report of farmers telling us they have received this cheap fertilizer, and we also know what this cheap means, I will take that as just something that has been reported. Did we not hear last week and early this week that indeed the quarantine facilities were available in KNH and Bagathi? Did we not read this?
Yes.
But we were told.
Yes, and then yesterday we were being told that, hold on, pause. The facility at Bagathi will be ready on Friday.
We're buying
ready, yes.
And then money has been allocated to buy the equipment needed. Same newspaper yesterday, money has not been received to buy the equipment now.
What is which is which? And then please, as we try to remove ourselves from the culture of having short memories, remember during the budget reading, not much was allocated to subsidies. Actually, none at all. No money was allocated to subsidies on fertilizers. So as we are being promised or told all this, remember when one of the biggest contentions those in this the agricultural sector had with the budget that we are using right now is that there was no money directed to things such as this. So take it as I would, as City would say, with a pinch of salt, because clearly.
Oh, no.
I think City is saying take it with a whole sack of salt.
Yes.
No, this isn't
don't
salt.
take it at all.
This isn't a sack.
Yeah.
Simply go to where you find salt. The entire field from where you harvest salt,
Dive into
whether
it.
it's from the sea or whether it's from some mine, go there. Yes, that's where you need to go.
I mean, at this rate, we'd have to read every headline with the word allegedly before.
Yes, you have to.
Oh,
Allegedly.
we do.
If it's a government statement,
We have to
please
interrogate it.
Yeah,
Please
for
do.
sure.
Please do. It is safer that way because you will be told things and you'll sit happily say, well, the government has said.
Yeah.
No,
but then
that is what has been reported. Wait and see
yourself.
wait and see. It's always important to have a wait and see. For the longest time with this
Yeah.
matter of the coronavirus,
Yeah.
we've had functionaries within various ministries talking to us about something they're not competent to discuss.
true.
This is a medical issue. It's only yesterday that people from the medical fraternity were being brought in to start discussing. They should have been involved from the very beginning. The very, very, very beginning. Even when the statements were being issued, there should have been people who are medically competent to comment on these things. Not government functionaries or bureaucrats.
This is true.
No. They can make a ministerial statement or a PS statement and then let the professionals come in and tell you this is how we see it.
Okay.
Yes.
I believe so.
When it comes to the welfare of the Kenyan citizen, take the view that it doesn't take second place, third place, go beyond 10. That's when maybe 11th, 12th. There are other priorities that the people who are charged with looking after the country consider to be a priority. And it isn't the welfare of
The people.
The welfare of the common mwananchi is managed and treated with words. We have put in place.
We are working.
We are
on
working on it. We
Systems.
want to
have a roadmap on how to manage the locusts.
Yes.
This roadmap takes us up to June.
It does, doesn't it just?
What?
And when we get to June, the roadmap now is going to take us to more words.
More words.
Remember that our socio-economic problems, by and large, according to our leaders, are simply solved by throwing words at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, quickly, shouldn't be too quickly, but no school for northeastern children as teachers flee the region on safety fears. Increased attacks targeting non-locals has left tutors traumatized, as the TSC says. It will only repost them once their security is guaranteed. This is something that requires the deliberate effort, again, on the part of the government to do something to make sure that the security of the children in this area and the teachers is guaranteed. If not, no school.
The TSC has taken the correct step.
In this case, absolutely. You got to do something about it.
The correct step.
They would, post teachers to this region. In some cases, unfortunately, teachers lost their lives.
And they're
Others
singled
were
out
living in
for
fear.
being non-locals.
Yes.
Clearly. So how about then just post natives of the area to
That doesn't quite solve the problem.
Why?
Because I don't believe that there was a concerted effort to actually target non-locals in all those areas. My personal view. They are an easy target because they are a minority. They are an easy target because many of them also happen to be Christian. They are an easy target because they are being caught right in the middle of a problem that has nothing to do with them. The government comes in, and this one, not the lion's share, they take the entire elephant of the problem. Yes, because one, we have security forces. We even have an army barracks in that very Garissa. We have intelligence forces.
Yes.
And many of these intelligence forces are locals. Reports that we've heard is that a lot of the times intelligence reaches the government agencies, but they do nothing about
it.
Yeah.
But of significance, places that have been known to be high security risks, they would have housed the teachers in a compound that is actually guaranteed safety.
Right.
If you look at what happened with the students who were killed in Garissa, the proximity of the barracks to that place, the intelligence there had been received and was reported in our papers. And then what happened? No, the TSC is right.
Yes.
Is right.
You can't take chances.
They're adamant on this that they will not risk deploying tutors in the rest of region, only for them to come back in coffins, and they're serious about this.
Rightly so.
Right. Brings us to the top of things. Trix and Gado, thank you very much for joining us today. The conversation continues.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have the Situation Room part of Morning Express, but unfortunately, we have to draw to a close and shift the conversation to other matters, local politics and current affairs. And of course, I'm going to hand over to Michael Gitonga, who will carry on with the conversation in studio. You can choose. I lean towards Morning Express. You can choose to carry on with us right here, or tune in, of course, if you're already watching on Morning Express, to the conversation that Michael Gitonga will be steering. Over to you, Mike.
Spice up your life.
All right, folks, let's see how things may have changed or remained the same. Mombasa Road, we still see a little bit worse now, very, very slowly coming all the way from the Siokimau railway station. Traffic on this hour, yes. The Thika Super Highway, Langata Road, Juja Road, Wayaki Way, Jogo Road, all seems to be moving very slowly this morning. Gong Road, however, is flowing well. Nothing to report getting yourselves to the city mortuary roundabout. Getting to the city stadium today off of Jogo Road, problems because we know that some of those roads are being worked on in industrial area. That of course takes us through till the 13th of March, so you need to be prepared. Kiambu Road is bad, 4 lanes already going to join with a Thika Road right now. So yes, smack dab in the middle of traffic hour, bumper to bumper situations wherever you see. Spice FMK is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see. However, the southern and eastern bypass is not so bad. The southern bypass will take you to Langata Road, where it's moving, but slowly, but it's moving. Better than a gridlock situation, eh? Give us a call, 0719-012-600. It's Wednesday morning. Let's keep it moving as much as possible.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in
the only way to start your day. This is the Situation Room, and you're tuned into Kenya's biggest conversation. Wherever you're listening or watching us from, we are live on Spice FM KE on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. In Nairobi on 94.4 is where you'll be able to find us. If you're in Mombasa, you are on 87.9, Nakuru on 96.0, Eldoret on 96.7, Nyeri on 90.9, Kisumu on 102.5, and 97.7 in Malindi. I'm Indroko in the studio this morning with C.T. Muga and Trix and Gado from the Morning Express on KTN. And we are now going into issues, tribalism, ethnic divisions. C.T., over to you.
Well, over to me, but remember that a monkey believes his bushy eyelashes
I love it.
cost him his beauty.
Say it again, City.
A monkey believes that his bushy eyelashes cost him his beauty.
Okay.
You know, the one word that seems to have been probably the utterance of which is considered to be almost an abomination to anybody who wants to speak in public is the word tribalism.
Yeah.
We want to talk about ethnicity. We want to talk about regional divisions, regional influences, and allegiances, but we don't want to talk about tribe. And yet, the one thing that is a constant and the one thing that would best define this country is that we are a very tribal lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
It is actually not unfortunate at all.
Why?
Because being tribal
doesn't no good.
No, it doesn't. It isn't negative. It's just a reality of the divisions that we have and the distinctions that we have and the diversity that we have. It's just a reality.
Mm-hmm.
The negative aspect of it is something that has been given to us. We have lapped it, we've absorbed it, we've accepted it, and we now respond to it. So that anytime the word tribe is used, you only think of the very negative connotations, and you think of what we call tribal clashes. You think of utterances that people make that are ethnically based and which divide people and distinguish people negatively. And yet, we don't face one simple reality, and that is divisions exist in mankind, even within families where you share common genes, you share a certain heritage, there are divisions. What tribe does, it just distinguishes you, and in this country, not just by the area you come from, but by language. And even when there's linguistic congeniality, you still find differences. But why this becomes an issue in this country is because when it comes to the issues that we relate to as economic, the problem is that you then consider that anything that is done in the name of your tribe is okay, meaning you even allow people to steal on your behalf. Mm-hmm. Because so long as someone has involved in some mega corruption and it comes from your community, you can't possibly see it was wrong, and yet it is wrong. You only need to look at the number of ministries, agencies, and businesses in this country that are going down. The insurance industry is going down because of inappropriate false claims. NHIF is burdened by false claims. If you look at the MES issue of equipment that was bought for counties, again, same thing. You begin a project with a certain cost and guaranteed there'll be a cost overrun even before it has begun. And when you begin a project, there will be that additional cost that almost doubles what was originally planned for. Yesterday's papers, we had a situation in KPA where certain items that we know would cost 10,000 shillings were now being bought for 79,000. And what makes it worse is that you have a situation where people will argue that nothing wrong was done, whereas it is clear as there is sunshine when there is sunshine, and clear as rain when there is rain, that it was actually done. And the support will be, it is our person. You look at the BBI. The struggle that we're now having with the BBI has to do with this very same idea. People feeling that it has tribal leanings. Yes, it does. And it must. It doesn't matter how you look at it. So long as political entities, political regions, politicians get together, they will represent the community from which they come from. So it will be tribal. But
can't it be regional, though?
The moment it's regional, it's tribal. It just depends on what suits the purpose and what sort of cloth would suit the particular suit that is required. I'm saying this, that when you understand that tribalism is not a negative thing, and that is just a reality you must face, that I, for instance, am a Luo, someone else is Luya, that one is a misconception. There is no homogeneity in that word, but for purpose of discussion, call it that. So and so, I would have preferred so and so is a Tiriki, so and so is a Samia. It would make more sense. So and so is a Chonyi. It's just a distinguishing feature. It is not a negative aspect of that personality.
What has happened, though, over time, CT, is that people have taken those differences and then to an extent almost bastardized them and used them for the negative. And we also continuously use them for the negative. And we also see that people have then taken it even further, that the only good thing then can come about from somebody who is like me, who speaks the same language as me, and culturally will do the same things that I would. And then you have, of course, an affinity for people, and then the dislike then for others who are not able to speak like you, dress like you, and to some extent think like you.
Right.
Over time, people have now drawn out the negative from that and used it in a way which has been terrible. If you want to look at conflicts around the world that started from a tribal base, one of the biggest examples that we have of that is coming out of Rwanda. And this was basically two tribes pitted against each other. And if you want to look at one of the social aspects that came from that, you find that something that was embedded in their psyche as far back as the times of colonialism, whereby a certain group of people, because they looked a certain way, were thought to be better because they were taller, fairer skinned, and the way in which their facial features then had been manifested was something akin to royalty. On the other hand, you had another group of people that were shorter, stouter, and their noses were flatter and they were darker. This was used to pit them against each other. So historically, they were conditioned to think a certain way. After the colonialists left, those thoughts still remained in the forefront of people's thinking.
Yeah.
And then it came out that these people find themselves to be better than us, not because they necessarily felt that way, but because they were made to think that way. And some of the things, coming into Kenya, some of the things I heard about certain tribes in this country, I had to do my due diligence to then find out that they were not true, right? But these are the things that you're greeted with when you step into the country, that a certain tribe is this way. And we've heard that also a certain tribe in Nigeria is this way. Who can you then connect that to in Kenya?
Yeah.
Based on what you have heard. And you'll find that is the overriding element in people's thinking, that the first time they see somebody who is not like them, the negative comes into play in terms of, all right, how then are we able to then divide ourselves? And this translates to how you raise your children. It translates to how you work. It translates to how you appoint. And people are more likely, it's just the way you will naturally gravitate. It's just the direction in which you'll naturally gravitate. If you're in a position of appointment, for example, and you find somebody of your tribe, natural gravitation is that you will give it to that person because you feel that there's something that you have in common.
Right.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing. It is not a bad thing because you do have it in common. However, people have then used it to invite hatred
People
over
have
time.
allowed
And
it.
Politicians have used it as a way of it's used in divisive politics all the time.
And we have
And
allowed them to
And we
do
have
so.
allowed them to do
That's
so.
the general sense I get from the room. It's not something that is bad, but then it is weaponized when needed, and it's serving certain political, needs of, of those who are in leadership. You need the numbers, and then you're going to appeal to their sense of belonging to make them feel safe enough under your rule, so that when they look at the others, they feel like, no, we have to stick together so that we can make sure that our interests are met. I love that you brought up the example of Rwanda, and what makes it even nastier a reality is the fact that they all spoke the same language. So these were literally fictitious differences that were pointed out by foreigners who were looking to divide and rule by pointing out that you look more like us, therefore you are better than them. And so if we keep you closer to us, we're going to win. Still back to the political agenda.
And you'll find that they coexisted. They coexisted previously with no problem before somebody came in, and
same
then because
culture,
divide
same
and rule,
language.
divide and conquer was an element that they thought about even before they landed on these shores.
It was a strategy.
And there was a strategy that they were going to use to divide the people, because then that meant that they could get more for themselves in terms of rule.
And when I talk about this subject, I love talking about your country because I wonder often that aside from Kenya and our shenanigans, and then we have Tanzania that is a beacon of, non-tribal politics and non-tribal, undertones when they come to talking about the way, when it comes to how they do their things, you find that they have so many tribes, probably more than us.
Not
but
probably.
Then, for sure.
Almost 10 times, right?
They have more than us. Then we have Nigeria, and I love that you're in the room. You go online and you hear about Yoruba demons, and you're wondering, wait, how are they Yoruba people? Are they promiscuous? So is this how I feel like we
do kindly correct this later.
No. It's a thing
this
online.
Yes.
No. It's a thing, and I usually wonder, what do they mean by this? Is this a tribal thing, or is it just a societal?
It's a societal thing. So there could be one thing. I mean, you want to look across the board, and this is what I was saying when I came, and people would ask me, "Oh, all right." I mean, we know
they'll try to categorize you.
There were different things that people would say, and I would listen to, and I say, "Okay, yeah," and they would say, "Well, the Kikuyu are known to be astute businessmen, Igbo, right?" Yeah. And we also understand that the Igbo in Nigeria are the same, and I would be able to say, "Okay, I can draw parallels between the two and say, yes, actually, this is something that we can see." Yoruba demons, like the example that you talk about, it's one thing. It's actually a historic piece of information that parents or grandparents would hand down information, oral tradition to their children, right?
But not necessarily true.
Not necessarily true, but then it was all entrenched in the mystical. And then it came about that people would use it as a thing to joke about later.
Yeah.
If you go into the south of Nigeria, for example, they will tell you Hausa man cannot do anything more than sell sweets and drink them in the market because they don't see them as an enterprising, sort of people. So you can imagine what that does. Conditioning over time. Right. I grew up knowing that people from the north, couldn't do much more than trade in petty things.
See?
Because it was a narrative that was carried through.
Later on, you find out.
Do you think that I would now vote in a Hausa man to rule the government, to rule the country, based on that narrative?
Not. Yeah. So, I mean, it all is, I think, a continental issue rather than just a Kenyan issue. But then, of course, we see it playing out heavily when it comes to the BBI.
CT, you're happy about something, but let's take a look at the weather and see what the temperature is like, and then we'll come back.
The Yoruba demon thing.
And the conversation continues.
Yeah.
Showers expected in Nairobi,
Spice.
26 and lows of 17. Currently at 17 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions. In Nakuru at 15 degrees, partly cloudy conditions. Showers will follow in the afternoon with highs of 24. It's clear skies in Eldoret. Rain and thunderstorms later on with highs of 23 and lows of 13. 19 degrees in Kisumu, thunderstorms in the afternoon with highs of 28 and lows of 19. Mombasa, cloudy conditions through the day. Rain expected with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Mostly cloudy conditions in Malindi today. A warm day at 28 degrees, highs of 32 and lows of 27. 16 degrees in Nyeri, and we'll see some rain with highs of 26 and lows of 15. In East Africa and Dar es Salaam, 26 degrees, thunderstorms with highs of 30 and lows of 24. And in Kampala, thunderstorms will carry the day with highs of 25 and lows of 20. Taking a look in Johannesburg, it's haze and fog, very low this morning at 12 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 12. And finally in Lagos, clear skies with periodic clouds at 27 degrees, highs of 35 and lows of 26.
Spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Mimi vile nimesema ni kusema tuko na furaha. Twashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu kwa kutufikisha na kutuweka uhai na kwa amani, kwa sababu amani ni kitu kikubwa sana. Na ile amani ukisikia tunasema tunaongea juu yake wakati tunaongea juu ya building bridges, ni kusema ya kwamba sioni sababu ya damu ya Mkenya awe ametoka wapi iwe itamwagika kwa sababu ya mashindano ya kisiasa. Tunaweza kushindana kisiasa, lakini tushindane kwa maono, sio kwa sababu ya kabila. huwezi kukula kabila lako, lakini unaweza kukula maono mazuri, na hiyo maono inaweza kutoka kwa Mkenya yeyote, kutoka pahali pepote. Na ndipo tunasema njooni tukae pamoja, tushirikiane pamoja, tuongozwe ni sera lakini sio ukabila, na tukiongozwa ni sera, sina shaka kutakuwa na amani.
Right. So very great sentiments right there.
Actually, my silence was in what I was actually reading here, and thinking, those again are words, well-meaning, well-intentioned, and if we could actually correlate certain things of reality that we can place alongside those words, it would be a wonderful thing. Now, we've talked about tribalism as though it's purely an African thing. It isn't. The world over is tribalism, world over, without exception. It's just that conflicting and fighting each other over not decades, centuries, some people came to realize we actually work better if we stop this nonsense of fighting and look at ourselves as a unit. Great Britain was actually known as Great Britain in 1608. And why the word great came is because of the size of the island. Among the isles that were in that area, that particular island was the greatest. So it was called Great Britain. But the word even Britain emanates from a Romanic word, Britannia. That's what it was called. But they had tribes. Call it the Celts. Call it the Who. The Welsh. It doesn't matter who you want referred to. They were as tribal and viciously so as us. The first group of people who actually brought them together, one could argue, were the Romans. Because the Romans went and beat everybody into line.
Right.
If you look at Italy itself, where the Romans came from, they themselves, later years after the known Roman Empire, they were as divided as any tribal unit you could think of. The Sicilians thought they were different from these. They were different. The guy called Garibaldi came along and again beat them into line. It's not as though the Sultan just agreed. No. There were wars fought for the unification of Italy. You move across to Germany, the same, tribalistic to death. And their wars were fought on tribal lines. A guy called Bismarck realized, no, this thing isn't going to work.
It's not going to work.
Yes, he beat everybody into line. Jump over to the Baltics, what you call Yugoslavia. A guy called Tito realized this thing isn't going to work as it is. They were together for the longest time. Tito died. The disintegration is still being felt today. USSR wouldn't have been what it was if all those nations around it had not been unified as USSR. Now, this is something those of us who live on this continent seem not to have been able to get into our heads correctly. If you look at in my opinion, the two tools that the colonialists used with great effect was profiling and lying. If you look at the way Kenya is, at what point would somebody from northeastern or the coast have gotten in touch, even when the railway was completed, with somebody from the middle part of Kenya? And yes, they wouldn't have. So why on earth would they have reason for disagreeing with these people or even thinking ill of them? At what point would they have interacted even? And yet, because of our politics and the way it's been engineered and the way it's progressed, people speak with authority about other groups of people whom they've never met, they've never interacted with, they've never had any harm caused by, but they speak with clarity and definition. As though that those people individually came to their specific homes
and
to cause them harm.
that thing so that they have a very personal account of why this person is rightly categorized as a thief or as a lover of chicken or, etc.
Yes, or a stone-throwing maniac.
Exactly. Which is quite wrong. But it points to our need for labeling. And I feel like sometimes we do this because we need to feel safe. We need to feel like we understand what is coming at us. So what you're not familiar, you'd rather categorize it in a certain way, so that when things are going in a certain direction, you find there is a predictability to it, which is informed by fear, which is not good. So when you look at the BBI, what it goes for The document itself, not the shenanigans.
Which version?
BBI 1, original.
Right.
BBI. It talks about trying to unify people, and then they tucked away. There's a day tucked away after Christmas that is meant to be a cultural celebration day that is supposed to be geared towards ensuring that we are more united by celebrating culture. But the biggest question was that how, even before we started doing the rallies and everything, is that how are we going to legislate ethos, unity, and such, you would call them abstract values and a sense of morality.
The question
that
I would
go
ask,
against divisive
is,
politics. Yes.
What you're saying, you're asking the right questions, but I would ask a different question, and that is, how do we stop the divisive elements that keep waylaying and gainsaying these things? Because how to legislate is not the issue. How to even put it into practice is even not the issue.
Look, if you went down to people who say they hate another tribe, just listening to what President Uhuru Kenyatta said, one of the things he said is that there is no benefit in dividing ourselves along tribal lines. Because if you look at it, really, there isn't. But if you ask people directly, what is the reason why you hate this person or you dislike? Chances are they would not be able to give you anything solid in terms of an answer. So this is the product of conditioning that has taken place over time.
So how do we undo it?
This is where we should be going.
What are we undoing
in terms
exactly?
of what are we undoing? It's a lie that has been told. It's a label that has been placed. So I think what we do need to do is show, as in many cases as possible, as at many times as possible, the fact that there was really no animosity between these two in the first place.
But remember, there are people who are constantly preaching that message and saying there is.
To their benefit.
That's why I
because
asked,
it's a direct benefit to
how
them.
do you halt? Because what needs to be done isn't difficult to figure out. But then there are people who work night and day to ensure that narrative is maintained. Look, isn't it so much easier to blame my ineffectiveness on somebody else?
And the Rwandan government is often accused of high-handedness when it comes to trying to stamp out certain tendencies that are usually based on tribal thinking and
you're not even allowed to talk about it.
And I feel it's justified. I don't know about the methods that they use, but I feel that kind of serious approach towards it is quite justified. But then at the same time, if you're looking at the examples from an African setup of places where this has been done, they opened up conversation, and I understand that's what the TJRC meetings were supposed to do. Help us go out, because why you say a lot of people do not have a person of a certain descent that did that specific thing to them that they use as a basis of their hatred. There's some who actually do. If we're being honest, there are people who try to do business with a member of a certain community and got swindled, and they were like, hey, then this is true. What I have been hearing all along, I have seen it today.
But
there's someone who met a person of a certain ethnicity who loved chicken and would kill for chicken, and there's someone else who was pelted by rocks while trying to go about their business because their Baba was not being treated fairly according to them. So there are certain pointers that people can look at and say they are justified.
The thing about a stereotype, stereotype though, is that it is based on some element of truth.
So if it meets that from a personal experience, if it meets that element of truth, then it just reinforces it.
But
so why not
unfortunately,
open
what
up?
cannot happen is that it cannot then be used as a blanket belief on the rest.
Oh, actually, no, it can. And
it should not.
It should
often.
Not. It shouldn't.
No.
Yeah.
It should
So
not
my
be.
point is, giving those examples, is that then we should open up platforms for conversations and forgiveness for those who feel they have been wronged by members of certain tribes, because we are being realistic. While we're saying this is not true,
that particular narrative somewhere along the line got overtaken with devolution.
Really?
Because, yes, we're now being swindled by our own. We are being robbed by our own.
And it is true, actually.
Yes. Yeah. So you cannot say that it's that other community whom we know to be this and we know to be the other. No. It's in-house. It's at your doorstep.
Okay.
It's within your own family members. It's been brought home. So devolution is a good thing.
It's showing us
There is nothing tribal about stealing. Everybody steals.
Does it.
And when it happens in your doorstep,
Yeah.
you have allowed someone to steal on your behalf. You may not think so. Remember, we were saying yesterday that by keeping quiet, people actually not just encourage, but they endorse certain negative things. The BBI has one of these very rare opportunities. It's rare in that it doesn't come very often in a lifetime. At independence, we had this rare opportunity for cohesion that we frittered away.
Yes.
Personal sectorial interests made sure that that was done away with. We had an opportunity in 2002. Once again, that one we bungled big time. We now have another opportunity. And why I'm calling it an opportunity, because this BBI, they call it initiative. It's a movement.
But City, you're already bungling it. Didn't you hear the Ma community leaders and all they had to say, and pointing to the fact that people should not come here and lead us. They should go and lead their own people back then.
It is perfectly all right for such unfortunate statements to be made because it points you at the need to tighten and fasten this particular process.
While we are still
yes, because
the initial
we haven't come to the end.
stages,
That's what I'm saying. Hope is still high. Hope is still rife. Are we going into the hour?
Yes, we're going to take a look at the roads, and we can come back and continue with this. Hope is still high that something can be done.
Yeah.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, looking at tribalism and looking at the tribal ways in which we carry out business in this country and around the world. We'll be back. Let's see what's going on the roads for now. If you can avoid Naivasha Road at the Riara Road Junction, please do, because it's crazy and absolutely no order today. So avoidance would be better. Limuru Road from the village market all the way into town today, quite a mess. Thika Road to Mombasa Road, that is using the Eastern Bypass. Nikubaya, as we are being told. 2 hours from Syokimau to Cabanas is what we see on Mombasa Road. It's not happening today, folks. Muthaiga trying to join the Thika Superhighway. It's quite a mess as well. There's traffic on Gong Road. Like we said before, coming off of Naivasha Road is not easy today. Waiyaki Way, we see a problem there as well. Babadogo is literally a parking lot. So it's parking lot, bumper to bumper, traffic, gridlock wherever you see it, except for Langata Road that is behaving so well today. It's moving at a very good speed and you can get to town as quickly as you would desire at this point. Okay, so I know it's traffic out. This is what we expect. The Eastern Bypass behaving badly, the Southern Bypass not so bad, because then you can get to Langata Road and get into town at a good hour. But we see what we expect. Remember also that Jogo Road is moving quite slowly today because of what we see happening in industrial area. If you see something that we should know about, please don't hesitate to let us know. Spice FMKE, reach us on Twitter, give us a call or send us a message if you need to, 0719 012 600.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Jamii zote za taifa letu la Kenya. Moi alitufundisha kwamba chuki ni mzigo, usijisumbue kubeba. Akatuambia ukabila ni ujinga, msikue na nafasi ya ujinga. And that is why we are leaders from this great Rift Valley where Moi began. We are going to be steadfast and firm in ensuring that our great country shall continue to be knit together. And Mr. President, I want to tell you, we will support your efforts in ensuring that this nation
Deputy President
together.
William Ruto talking about the fact that it is necessary for us all to come together, for all Kenyans to come together and shed off this tribal image that has dogged people for the longest time, and said that that is the only way, and is ready to support. Unfortunately, I say 3 times, definitely seemed to be one of those who then would use tribe or would use those that he is, likened to push a certain agenda or to separate from other people. I mean, he was being said to have brought in the Kalenjin vote, as it were. And the people, went along with him because they saw that they were like him. Right. And since he is a leader and he happens to be from where we are from, that is what we are going to bring. It was said time without number. It was said time without number that he brought in.
What you're saying is true.
He brought in the Kalenjin vote.
But
I
wish politics worked that way. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
People galvanize around someone who they feel will be able to bring the goodies that come with power. That's how it works. So if your leader seems to promise you something that will bring you to the... And given our politics, I'm talking about the politics in Kenya.
Yes.
You will galvanize around them because being around him brings about that promise.
True, and but see, there are groups, there are huge groups, there are large groups of people in this country, in other countries, who will go for a leader by virtue of the fact that he is from the same place.
But you see, City, they do that because I'm not
saying that what you're saying is not true. No, that is very true. That's where you begin. But that happens. Please remember that we've had a situation where this wasn't true in 2007. Please understand this. All right? The President Moi had left power in 2002. And then his party, KANU, was not supported by his own people. They went for another party. So you have to ask, what is it that made them vote for these other people and this other party? That's the question you should ask. And if you're asking that question, ask again to bolster what you're saying. In 2013 and 2017, what is it that made this same group move from where they had voted before and vote this way? That's what I'm trying to explain. And that, yes, there is the tribal element of this is our son, and with him at the helm, certain goodies will come our way.
Yes. But we don't do that just from nowhere. It is a precedent that has been set by previous regimes, whereby when a certain president is in power, then you see a certain tribe flourishing. Then everyone decides. Then this means that if I want my region or my county
my own,
then I have to vote and rally behind a certain person who is our son, as you put it. But if we had the type of governance that would be across board, just deliver to everyone, then I bet you nobody would feel the need to vote along tribal lines.
Actually, that's why devolution was thought of by those who came up with the new constitution.
Right.
They understood what we are saying here
so that we
clearly.
Can share the pie
They said,
equally.
look, let us not try to kill ourselves with this thing. Let us take the bulk of our resources to where they're most needed.
Mashinani.
Have your counties.
Yes. But then when
why this has continued is because that hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened.
No, revolution has been fought.
It has been fought, but even where it's being actualized, there's another creature that has come up aside from tribalism that was affecting us previously, corruption. We have a guy here called Wololoyaye on Twitter who says the cure for tribalism is eradication of corruption. The two go hand in hand, because if devolution had not met its brother corruption at the mashinani level, then perhaps those delivered services would be experienced in a better way, and therefore people would not need actually to still.
Our argument here has been that corruption is actually a symptom, not a problem.
Right.
The problem is impunity. If you look at corruption in this country, it's mind-boggling to the point where it can actually freeze you. There's nothing that our people will not steal. No, and when I say nothing, I mean nothing. This coronavirus issue, you almost get the impression that they were praying that it comes so that we can be funded. And with funding means that we can siphon some of that money to our own ends. Okay,
it's exhausting.
Look at the way we handle the equipment. This equipment is intended to make the health and care seeking needs of our people met, isn't it? Instead, they're burdened with payments that they hadn't asked for. And at the end of it, what it was supposed to achieve, has it achieved? The answer is no.
Yeah.
It has created yet a new problem. Take a chain and please take your pick, whether it is fertilizer, whatever it is. You will find that at the end of it, half the problems you're dealing with are problems. Someone feels that I can make money out of this. Damn the people who die. But so long as I feel I will not be caught, then that's the impunity. I'll continue. There's nowhere in this country where people are not stealing. Nowhere.
Whatever
Even
tribe.
within the church, people are stealing.
Whatever tribe. So
Yes.
if I look at it a little bit more critically, then I'm inclined to say that the tribal aspect that we see in this country is not necessarily that people don't like or hate another tribe.
No.
If you look right at it, right at the heart of the matter, it's not that they hate or dislike another tribe. It is that they want to make sure that their interests are protected. And they would go to any length to make sure that those interests are protected, even at the risk of it looking as though they hate or dislike somebody else.
Yes, but then I figure...
Spot on.
Yes, spot on. But I figure we're also ignoring another issue,
Yes.
land.
Yes.
Land. When it
Land.
comes to the Ma community, land is a thorny issue, and we're having the sentiments that came out in that recent rally that where it was seen that certain individuals are coming to take our land. This land is meant for us. It was given to us by our ancestors. We look at the coast. It is a similar thing. Wabara, wamekuja, wakanunua. Those types of
They don't say nunua. Chukua.
Yes, they say take. And in certain instances, they actually go and just settle on someone's land because they feel they are entitled to it. So I feel like while tribe corruption actually influences some of our very tribal elements, there are certain historical injustices that push us deeper into holding on to our identities
It is true,
as certain tribes.
but let's start with the real and the correct injustices. Injustice number one, the utterances that were attributed to the senator for Narok, which in many ways sounded completely anti-Kikuyu. Okay?
If we're going to get down to it, right?
But that's what it was.
Yes.
At one level, he seemed to have been addressing his own people, not the general public. And he seemed to want to position himself as a champion of his people's rights and interests.
Yes.
But of all the people, he says, who originated from Central, who have land there, I would very much like to see someone who didn't buy land. They bought. Willing buyer, willing seller.
Currency exchanged hands.
It's the duty of those leaders to protect their people against exploitation.
Yes.
Which is a different discussion altogether.
Educating the people on their rights and how to go about these
In other
transactions.
instances, you will find that is many leaders who actually encourage the exploitation of their people.
Yes.
So then in this case, tribalism in Kenya is not the people's problem. Tribalism in this case is something that is perpetuated by leaders to use that to continue to get a lot on their side.
But if we are looking at...
in terms of moving forward,
But if
in
we're
terms
looking
of
at
getting
these-
any kind of political acclaim,
If-
they understand that those... Look, you will find that there are some people upon which the temperatures are brewing and saying, okay, yes, well, if it came down to it, perhaps maybe we would fight or we'd get into conflict. And I think it is upon that leaders then use that as a stepping stone upon which to get some kind of acclaim for themselves. They use that it's clear that they use it.
The thing that you need to understand is the issues that arose in the Rift Valley, what they call the tribal clashes from 1992, that led on to 2007, began with such narratives. That's why they're so dangerous. People in Kalenjin land, it began. People have taken our land. And the question that you ask, who took your land?
Exactly.
That's why I said, if you want to talk about this fairly, communities like the Ma should have legislation that protects them. They're not the only ones.
Absolutely. And when you hear these people talk about it, while you might look at them as the villain standing there propagating hate speech.
No, there are many ways they're victims.
Yeah, and there are very many instances they're speaking from a point where so many members of the community have come to them and said, I had this vast piece of land, I had this engagement with so and so, and they sold it, and then later on I find out it was worth 10 million, yet I got it for $1 million or 5.
No, that discussion is not always true.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a time space. I buy it today at 2 shillings.
It appreciates.
10 years down the line, it cannot, if it now costs 10 shillings, that's what it costs 10 years after.
Exactly.
But
those are the sentiments that these people hold true. They feel, they do believe that they were exploited.
Certain communities are disadvantaged.
Yeah.
They must be protected. That's why the issue of affirmative action comes in. And there must be actually laws that protect them, exempt them from certain things, give them certain privileges. There must be.
Absolutely.
And those in political leadership are aware of this thing that you have just said.
And their leaders are also aware.
And rather than do something about it, they still use it to divide people on these same lines.
No.
As opposed to looking at City. As opposed
they make utterances of division. The division takes place when we act.
But do you know
they don't divide you. They just utter divisive words.
That is all right. They utter divisive words, but that
on a basis
it does something to your psyche, and we can't run away from that fact. We have people we have people who heard the sentiments, as authentic as they may have been, pointing to the fact that these individuals from this area are actually victims, and something should be done in terms of legislation to make sure that they are protected. However,
they don't do
those
that.
sentiments that were made were just expressions.
The
in terms of then what was done,
are also victims.
Well, that's okay. But in terms of what was done, in terms of what was done, in terms of legislation, nothing has been done. We're still pussyfooting around the issue. It hasn't been done. It hasn't been done. So what you do is when you come and you make statements like that, they're incendiary in nature.
Yes, they are.
And so people want to actually say, you know what? We are the victims.
They wouldn't be playing to the emotions of the crowd if there were no emotions.
Anybody else who comes against us essentially is anti-Ma.
And those statements are wrong. All right?
They are.
The point I'm making here is the people against whom those statements are made are also victims. If you get to the root of this matter, people from central Kenya were the only community who one could argue were displaced en masse at colonialism. Displaced.
City, hear me.
En masse.
Hear me before we take a break. But this is the thing. The people who then come and make these statements are aware of what you are saying, that this thing needs to be entrenched in legislation. They are aware that it has not happened. But there's also some kind of political legitimacy that they're looking for by making these statements, as opposed to coming out and saying something needs to be done in the law to protect us. They come out and say, don't let anybody come and take your land, because it takes away from your authenticity as a tribe in this country.
And when you say don't let,
that is the problem.
Chase them
so
out?
When you say don't let,
Violence?
what are you doing? You're encouraging conflict, you're encouraging violence. That's where the problem lies.
No, it doesn't.
Let's take a break and you can come and tell us why it doesn't.
Fantastic.
Spice. Right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Tumesikia mengi na nafikiri wakusikia amesikia. Yule ambaye hajasikia tumuombee Mwenyezi Mungu. Jukumu ya mambo yale yote yametajwa hapa siku ya leo yaanza na mimi, yaanza na wewe. Kila mmoja wetu ako na jukumu ya kutekeleza kwa upande wake, kuhakikisha tumepambana na ufisadi, tumelinda mazingara, tumefanya kazi pamoja kuhakikisha tuko na amani, kwa sababu bila amani hakuna kazi kwa vijana, na tuweke Wakenya wetu pamoja. Huo ndio msingi wa maisha na dunia nzima. Na kila mtu akichukua jukumu lake, sioni ni kwa sababu gani hatuwezi kupambana na haya yote ambayo yatukumba. Shida ambayo tuko naye, tukiona tabu, mtu anaweka kidole anasema ni yule. Kutoka leo tumeambiwa jiangalie wewe mwenyewe.
The history that we should focus on, even as we have this discussion, and I'm responding to the no, it isn't, is how the very principle of divide and rule has been successful. Because it was a colonial construct. It was brought in to ensure that the people of this particular part of the world do not get together and gang up. The colonialist aims and gains were far, far better looked after when people were divided. That's why a handful of people could control an entire country. That's how they did it. It is the same tactic that our political leaders use. It is divide and rule. So long as I get you, my people, meaning the people of my linguistic affiliation, think that I, in position of power, will bring you all the development goodies you dream and think of, then I'll support you. Right now, we've had a divided party called Jubilee, Tanga Tanga and Kieleweke. And among the complaints and a lot of this division has played up actually in central Kenya, nowhere else. But if you look at the reasons that have been given behind it, is that they feel that this leader whom Central supported as their own, that is our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, hasn't delivered. Not on his promise. People felt that if their own was in power, certain benefits would come to them. They're not seeing it. We're on our 7th year. They're still not seeing it. So you wonder, hey, and in fact not seeing it because of the nature of the mismanagement of this particular country or the economy. People who were once wealthy are now becoming poor. They've done business, they haven't been paid. There are people who are owed money for even 4 years. Legal, legitimate work. You did the service, you supplied your goods, you're not being paid.
Even the agricultural sector, particularly in Central, is feeling the heat.
The county governments are notorious for not paying. Now, the central government did something good. National government said, halt all projects, pay people. Again, you still see hits and misses and hiccups because the same games that are being played. You are told start paying people from, say, 4 years. 4 years ago, we're talking about, say, 2016, 20. They still want to bring in their own people whom they favor to pay in the current time. And the system won't allow it. At the national level, the people who've done business, some of them have done legal work. Some of them are under question. Some of them supplied goods and services to different government ministries. They haven't been paid. Now, if you owe money and to any institution and you haven't paid them for 4 years, there'll be foreclosure. They'll take your property. The government owes you. They haven't paid you. What do? Take a court injunction. Take a process server. Take an auctioneer. What are you going to auction? Harambee House. How are you going to go about it? The point is, something that was anticipated didn't happen. That's why the division is taking place. People always grumble, mumble about what they feel was promised and wasn't delivered.
So do you think this cures us off of that narrative that voting along tribal lines or moving?
It's for benefit. It's not a religious inclination. No, it's commerce.
Okay.
If our person, even when you think of leadership in your communities,
did not deliver. So
yes. Why do you want a certain person? Let's talk about, say, a county. That county has many tribes. Okay? People call them sub-tribes. They're tribes.
They're tribes.
And those who are most popular tend to have the advantage in that they'll have more people, say, in the county assembly, and they may most likely have a senator or a governor. But why are these people voted in? Because it is believed that with them in power, the goodies that come with the county system will benefit them.
Right.
And usually it's from that small enclave where that person comes from. That small community comes from. They feel they should benefit the most. And even when it is divided, an assistant or deputy governor will come from a different region. A senator again from another third region within that whole sphere. Why? So that you feel this thing has been divided and we also have a chance of getting something. The subversion of our values and the demeaning of them to the point where they are quantifiable objects in terms of how much do we gain monetarily, that also is at the heart of this problem that we speak of. And once it's monetarized, corruption is easy.
That's true.
It's very, very easy because the corruption we speak of has to do with how much do I make. So quantification and commercialization takes center stage in our minds and in our souls. So we're easy to buy and sell.
I still do think that leaders or a lot of people who make public these sentiments, or at least use and make some of these remarks in public, are aware of the fact that these tensions simmer at a certain level.
To certain
and
emotions
they play to that because they are aware that people actually have that. If somebody walks into Central and says certain things about other tribes and talks about, we actually have to make sure that we get this guy out, for example, you're already playing to something that it is already resident in the heart, a mental conditioning of somebody else, and for a fact that you can make gains because of how those gains have been made historically.
Yes.
We can't divorce ourselves from that to say that leaders don't use that as an avenue or as a tool towards any kind of propagation of self. They do.
I'm willing
to
bet when a local comes to a leader from a certain area and complains bitterly about how so and so, chances of them just sympathizing, giving them blanket sympathy over them saying, no, you are wrong also because you are not aware that this is how these things happen. It's very unlikely that it will go in that direction. They will try to play to your emotions and make you feel sorry and make you feel comforted and grounded in your assertion that so and so came from another county, came here and did this to us. Well, it's because it's easy to gain favor by playing to certain people's emotions. And when they speak, if they knew for sure that they would be booed off that stage by saying what they were saying, I'm sure they wouldn't. So there must be some truth to some belief on the ground that this is how it works. It does not mean that the people that are being spoken against are the villains. They are equally victims by being spoken of in that particular manner. And I think it was also wrong for him to use a leader in society, Francis Atwoli, as an example of someone who has come here but he just goes back to lead his people. When he's talking leadership, he does not interfere. Leadership should be beyond that.
Trix, you really are right. But you see, in order to understand something, you need to face up to the reality of it. And it is you who even said it. The reason why these things, these utterances are made is because those who make them know they'll find fertile ground on which to land.
Right, yes, because there's something that has already been planted.
They know.
It has germinated when it comes to these tribal sentiments. It's already there.
What do you think led to Brexit?
The match. It just needs the match to be lit.
Tribal politics.
True, for sure.
People, the British felt the English.
These outsiders.
Because the Irish have had their different, the Welsh have, but they said, no, this identity of ours is being lost. We're being dictated to by Belgium. Does it not sound tribal to you?
Extremely.
The Germans seem to have taken over. These were tribal discussions taking place. You look at Trump and you look at the people who support him, they call it blue collar. His tribesmen.
They are.
What do you think that is? And what I love about President Trump, he actually lends credence to the fact that some of these things are not African traits, they're human.
They're not. The only
that
difference...
man is such a typical African president.
The only difference, though,
he doesn't even know it.
I would have to point out is that the consequence in the war in certain countries is on another level. But in Africa, the chances of people picking up arms against one another are very real. And we've seen it recently, and we see it happen in other countries.
But they do pick up arms in that country. The white supremacists in America... No, they do. It's just that their system evolved to the point where it actually works.
Okay.
And people support its working.
It's institutionalized in a way.
It's institutionalized. So you can try and work against it, but you're in the minority.
When you talk about what leaders then should do, I mean, of course, I'm going to go to one of the places that I know best. And we talk about presidential elections in Nigeria, for example. It is agreed. Right now, the presidency is held by somebody north, because they understood, look, these things are there. There's very little that we're going to be able to do to separate ourselves from the likelihood of people wanting to bring in people that they know, right? Or that they speak the same language as. So what we're going to do, since it becomes so terrible to the point whereby in the early 50s, we had
60s
secession and things like that.
Let's just...
North. Next time, South. Next time, North.
And it's understood.
It is understood. It is in law. It is entrenched in law.
And it's practiced.
Yes.
Practiced. And we've understood ourselves. So whether you want to bicker and bout for the next 5 years, that is up to you.
This time it's
Because you will get your turn and it will be fine. Because you've understood what is going on. It doesn't remove the fact that those simmerings will happen. It doesn't remove the fact, like I said, the Hausa man will go to Benin, for example, and all he will sell is chewing gum and razor blade in the market. It doesn't mean that the Igbos going up north to Jos, for example, will be able to do anything more than find themselves in a particular market. At the end of the day, who rules over with the umbrella?
Can I ask the question?
Yes.
You have states, don't you?
Yes, it's a federal system.
Aren't those governors powerful people?
They're the gods.
Yeah.
They're
So
the
you
gods
have
of their
your own.
state. So you have your own governor,
Your own.
right?
To
You have your
imprison
own
you,
governor.
to bother you, to rob you,
steal.
your
So
own.
you can talk about the fact that the federal system, the national government is
Could
not
be in a
taking
certain
care of you,
way,
but then
but
you
then
can
the
go to your
locals,
state governor and you can whine and complain for as long as
And
you want.
therefore-
But you see what we're saying? Entrenched in law. Something can be done about it.
Yeah.
What we see here, unfortunately, is that leaders know that this thing can be entrenched in law. They know they can take it end to end and make sure that something can be done about it to protect the very peoples that will be used as victims that can then divide people. But I am saying that they choose
purposely,
not
yes,
to,
yeah.
because this is a tool for them to gain some kind of political expediency along the line.
Right.
They can decide, we are not going to do this thing. The solution is right here.
Right.
But also,
But they decide not to do anything about it because it is a tool that they can use in the future.
Those abhorrent extremities also highlight the reality of the problem. Because why are we having this discussion? Because someone said something on God on earth.
What are you
on earth
thinking?
is this person?
Yeah.
Yes, but we are now looking at the issue and we're now discussing it.
Absolutely.
These things lasted with us for as long as one could remember. The Constitution brought it into being and saying, fine, let's have county systems. Now, with the county system, in all honesty, your focus ought to be on the county where service is delivered. But the national government has for the longest time played cat and mouse games. They make sure that they're not well funded.
They're not well funded.
Yeah.
As they say, it only takes a spark to get a fire going, right? So the fodder is there for the fire. And what we have, unfortunately, is that these statements making place now are the match. It is very easy to plunge people into into a position of conflict. And I think it needs to be very careful. Even when leaders are using these sentiments for political gain, there's a lot then that can be lost. Trix and Gado, thanks for joining us.
Always
I'm
a
sure we'll
pleasure.
see each other once soon.
Yeah, we will.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life. Broadcasting worldwide.
All right, let's take a look at the weather. Nairobi at 17 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions, rain expected later with highs of 26 and lows of 16. In Nakuru, 15 degrees, 27 degrees later is the high with rain expected. Eldoret thunderstorms later on with highs of 23 and lows of 13. In Kisumu at 19 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 19. Thunderstorms to come in later. Cloudy conditions in Mombasa, highs of 32 and lows of 27. Malindi at 28 degrees, lows of 27 and highs of 32. Rain expected in Nyeri at 26 degrees. Dar es Salaam 26 degrees, thunderstorms later. Kampala the same, currently at 21 degrees, highs of 25 and lows of 20. Fog in Johannesburg all through the day with later on clear skies, highs of 23 and lows of 12.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
Knowing and understanding your epidemic is the first step to defeating it. This is a unique virus with unique features. This virus is not influenza. We are in uncharted territory. We have never seen before a respiratory pathogen that's capable of community transmission, but at the same time, which can also be contained with the right measures. If this was an influenza epidemic, we would have expected to see widespread community transmission across the globe by now, and efforts to slow it down or contain it would not be feasible. But containment of COVID-19 is feasible and must remain the top priority for all countries. With early aggressive measures, countries can stop transmission and save lives. We appreciate that people are debating whether this is a pandemic or not. We're monitoring the situation every moment of every day and analyzing the data. I have said it before and I will say it again. WHO will not hesitate to describe this as a pandemic if that's what the evidence.
Right. So we're hearing from the deputy president of the World Health Organization. That's Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus. And as we continue to look at coronavirus this morning and see then where we are, we're taking a different shift now and saying that alongside coronavirus then comes what we've seen as xenophobia. Before we get into that, now looking at the details of what we've heard coming out of the WHO, and this is of course for global attention and for global action that is needed or required, is that every minute of every day, measures are being put in place to make sure that this doesn't spread as quickly as as it's seeming to, and that we want to be able to stop these circumstances that the world is facing. Of course, this was yesterday that this statement was made, and we saw that, yes, more infections. We saw that double numbers coming out of some countries, namely Japan and the United States, a lot more than what we had seen previously. Now, with the sentiments coming out of the WHO, there's a lot more than the medical aspect of all of this. Apart from the virology, apart from the epidemiology of it all, we see a situation that it is very clear that now, based on already formed stereotypes of the coronavirus, enter xenophobia, and it is actually moving much quicker than what we see the virus is able to do. Take a pick, throw a stone, and you're likely to land on something. Is that now, even here in this country, even in different countries, citizens or Chinese nationals are then being looked at as carriers of the virus without even any kind of testing being done. It could be that it is played on your psyche that because China is the epicenter of this disease, and certain parts of China for that matter, the epicenter of this virus, definitely means in the minds of many people that any Chinese national then carries this disease. And now we see almost immediately a hatred for these people. They're for Chinese nationals. You find yourself in a public space or in a public arena, the first inclination is to take a step back or to hope that this person is not carrying this disease. We saw this jump out at us yesterday in some parts of social media right here in Nairobi. We see in different countries that people are saying, look, anybody of Chinese descent or Chinese nationality, we don't want anything to do with them. And this is xenophobia right now. What we see with xenophobia in South Africa, we see it happening now in different parts of the world, and already being asked to step aside, to step into a different line, pulled apart in airport queues, pulled apart in markets, or we have cab drivers who've even told us and said, look, we're not carrying them right now. We don't know what it is they're carrying. We're not selling to them. This is what we see. And these are one of the things about this virus that we have to be very, very careful about.
You know, it's as though people are looking for an excuse to ostracize the Chinese. Think about it. We've had flus and influenza outbreaks for the longest possible time with far, far greater fatalities. Far, far greater. And we've had them. What the WHO CEO seems to have mentioned, Director General, I think is what he's called, is that I heard three things. One, we are trying to understand it, and we do. Two, for it to be an epidemic, it should have spread around the world right now. We've contained it. Three, we also know for a fact that we have ways in which we can continue managing it, and the death toll isn't that high. If you start with, say, the death toll alone, are we saying that for something to be serious or dangerous, people must of necessity die, or are we determining it by the number of people who actually get infected over a period of time? Because if you have large numbers of people being infected over a period of time and yet a cure can be found for them and they are well, then again, the question we ask, why is there panic? Yes, people get diseases all the time. The cancer kills and kills painfully. Is there panic about it? No. There's concern about it. There's need for us to take care about it. But is there panic? The answer is no. HIV caused a panic. Did it stop you from traveling? No. Part of the reason is the way we have been informed, the manner in which you can actually contact the virus. Now, that actually interferes with just our day-to-day interactions.
Right.
Breathing, sitting, touching, it interferes. Handshakes, hugs, it interferes. Now, but that alone, again, if that was the worry, the numbers still do not justify the panic. It doesn't.
But what we see now, and I think this is the worrying thing, it's a trend. I mean, I think beyond a trend, because then it's now a practice. In Nairobi, anybody of Chinese descent, anybody who is in your general area, then it becomes, no, we don't want anything to do with them. They've brought this disease, they've brought this virus into the country, without weighing this against the facts that actually no Chinese national outside of China has actually been reported to have been infected with the virus.
That is where now the communication people in any government setting needs to have highlighted that, you know, if you're talking about Chinese nationals, the only Chinese nationals who have been identified as having the virus are in China.
Are in China, yes.
Full stop. But because the word China has featured in relation to the virus for this long, you need to be Chinese. I mean, to be Chinese, you need to have come from China.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, you are going to bear the brunt of all the illogical sentiments that people currently have. Did you hear people sort of like moving away from anyone who came from DRC because of Ebola? No.
No.
Did you hear them moving away from people from certain parts of West Africa because of Ebola? No. You know, even as we keep looking at the coronavirus, the reality that I keep looking at is there is that possibility that these numbers are greater than we have been told. Because if you listen to countries that are projecting the possibility of infection, listen, and we're talking infection, we are not talking death. The infection alone shouldn't be an issue because people get malaria in this country every other day. We don't even panic. Why? Because we know what it is. People even know what to do. People, even the simplest of person knows the symptoms of malaria. Unfortunately, even flu, so long as you're exhibiting a fever, is considered someone is Nikona malaria because you feel you have a fever. And yet, that is a symptom. It's not necessarily the disease. So you're told, go and get tested. And once you're tested, then you can determine what it is that you're actually suffering from. The coronavirus has taken over our lives. And it's only now that the debate on what it is doing to the economy of the planet, it's only now that we're beginning to discuss it. And it is affecting the economy more than it's affecting people. And if it affects the economy as it's doing right now and continues, then definitely more lives are going to be caused. Because one, businesses are shutting down. Industries are shutting down. Children aren't going to school. Tell me when it was you heard of a situation where schools were shutting en masse or entertaining the idea.
And for a long period
Some
of
are saying
time.
we want to fumigate, we want to do it, but they're shutting down schools, shutting down, no going to school. What does that tell you?
Well, of course, this thing is more serious than we think. But if you want to come back, I'm still on this xenophobia issue. I don't think that it's necessarily the virus that we may have discussed before that is causing this kind of, pre-hatred or dislike. We saw over the last 10 years what many have called the Chinese takeover. If we're going to look at Kenya only, right? Coming in terms of companies for setting up infrastructure in this country. We saw at some point that there was uproar from some leaders that said, we have Chinese actually coming in and they're going as far as roasting maize on the side of the road. These jobs, can they not be for someone else? I think now at this point that this virus has created an opportunity to actually express the dislike that is very, very resident in this country for people who come in and take over, whether it is business, whether it is any kind of social field on whatever level.
But did they
the virus has provided the virus in this case, if we're just looking at Kenya, I mean, as far as Kakamega, people are saying things whereby, somebody was seen with a bloodied face mask and such and basically told you need to go back to your country instead of spreading this disease here in all parts. I think it has provided ample ground for the expressions of the dislike of the Chinese takeover, as it were.
What have the Chinese taken over exactly?
Well, I mean, they've come in and, a lot of businesses. You've seen the increase of restaurants all around the city setting up their business. You've seen what many people will call China Center, Chinatown. They've come and set up estates. Kenyans don't like it. Kenyans don't like it. They're not happy with it.
Why?
Because
what have they taken exactly?
There's an advantage that they have by coming and setting up business and against the fact that many people don't have. Or that don't have these jobs, or are doing jobs which they feel that Kenyans should be able to do.
But are the Kenyans being prevented from doing those jobs?
I mean, they're not being provided with a conducive environment upon these jobs can be procured. And this is the sentiment.
Let me take
and I think that Corona then provides a beautiful avenue for these. It provides a beautiful avenue for these expressions to be made.
What is a conducive environment for roasting maize on the road?
You need a jiko and some charcoal and a match, no? And yes. Some maize, of course.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the issue here, as you correctly put it, is the coronavirus. I agree with you. But if you look at the genesis of what you're saying, forget social media for the time being. It just passes on what people want to pass on. Let's pause and ask ourselves, what is it that our people actually fear? It's not the Chinese. The Chinese represent something that has happened to us for a very long time. Most Kenyans feel their lives are not in their control.
Mm-hmm.
Other people make decisions for them, and unfortunately those decisions are not good for them. Their lives keep getting worse because of the decisions. Because those decisions have been made, and because the Chinese are now here, Kenyans are aware that they're paying for something called an SGR, and they're paying a lot of money for it.
Let's go into a break, Siti, and come back and look at, continuing with this particular train of thought that you're leading here, and we'll come back in a short bit.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The number of cases in China continues to decline. And yesterday, China reported 206 cases of COVID-19 to WHO. The low since 22nd January. Only 8 cases were reported outside Hubei province yesterday. Outside China, a total of 8,739 cases of COVID-19 have been reported to WHO from 61 countries, with 127 deaths. In the last 24 hours, there were almost 9 times more cases reported outside China than inside China. The epidemics in the Republic of Korea, Italy, Iran, and Japan are our greatest concern. The Republic of Korea has now reported more than 4,200 cases and 22 deaths, meaning it has more than half of all cases outside China. However,
can still be contained. We're hearing from the Deputy President of the World Health Organization, and that's Dr. Heber Jesus. And looking at these numbers that are coming out of the world and bringing it home, CT, as you were saying before we went into the break, and saying that, the numbers that we see, it's taken the world by storm. And it's presenting so many opportunities for other things to come to the fore.
That's really what I'm saying.
And here in Kenya, I think that the latent dislike or the latent affront to any kind of what would have been called a Chinese takeover is what we see coming forward. This is the opportunity that I see that has been created for Kenyans then to be able to vent now and say, actually, you know what? Here's an opportunity. These folks are the ones who are carrying this disease. They've done all this else in this country. And here again, this disease has come. It's not about the virus, as far as I'm concerned. Here, it isn't, it's venting.
If we leave the Chinese out of the discussion and look at how it is, if you start from, say, the county level and you ask, where does the governor come from in any county? The area, anytime there's a problem in that county, they'll blame the people from that section of the county. These people are doing this. And usually, they will find justification because you will find there may be a disproportionate number of people employed from that particular region. So they will say, than others. No one ever does the math to say it's balanced, no. But they'll say, yes, there are few, but look at the places of influence that they have. Take it up to the national level, and you'll find it's an argument that has been with us since independence. The people in power tend to have their own, as in people who have that linguistic affiliation to them in positions of power. And they'll tell you it's in government, or rather it's in ministerial positions, it's in parastatals, it's in any key position that they'll explain to you and even give you the numbers. This country, we've had it for the longest possible time. It hasn't gone away. Now, when you then bring in the issue of taxes that arise from the debts that we owe, and you look at the situation where we keep borrowing, and most of the borrowing right now, short-term loans coming from China. You throw this in with the issue of the SGR railway. People feel these Chinese are taking over. And then you hear a rumor of, for all you know, the port might actually get sold to the Chinese. Already in the minds of the Kenyans, the Chinese are not good people.
Of course not. They've come and they've taken over potential businesses that could be there for Kenyans.
Not only that, they are responsible for our problems.
Right. They give us money that we can't afford.
Yes. They gave us money which we asked for, which we can't afford. Yes. But it is something that has been in our minds. All it required was for us to shift it and place it elsewhere.
And the virus, this coronavirus and the spread around the world has presented the perfect opportunity for that.
It has.
And it is latent feelings that has come out. And so here, conversations that have been had over the last 2 days and saying, well, finally, here is something that they have that we don't. In this case, being a good thing, right? They have this disease, we don't have it, and it seems that we're not able to get it. And the things that have been coming out of the mouths of many a Kenyan at this point has been, well, you know what? We don't want to be anywhere around them. I get into a lift and a Chinese national walks in. I'm likely to take a step to the left because I don't want to be associated with this at all. But I think it goes further than this, whereby now people then have a fear that in many cases, unfortunately, may be founded on a little bit of information as opposed to as much information as is required.
I would take this argument further. If you look at, say, the divisions that we are informed exist in Jubilee, Tanga and Kieleweke, a lot of it, people will tell you, has to do with the economic woes that many people in the president's backyard have felt. But I would give it an even psychosocial perspective, and I would say that human beings don't, for any length of time like to be ruled over ad infinitum. That's why kingdoms, empires, emperors, kings found themselves playing second fiddle when people got tired. Not that you don't even need to do anything wrong. People just like change at some level. At some level, they don't want change. At some level, they prefer change. Yes. So you could find that someone like the president is a target of very many negative sentiments that may not necessarily be of his own making or doing. Some inherited from his father. Some inherited from people who preceded him in politics and represented the community. Not the community asked them to represent them in certain things, but they were considered the representatives of the community. And you will find that if there is a domination by a group from a certain part of that community or even a certain family, there'll be things that are said about them and problems heaped on their doorstep, some of which they have absolutely no say over, they have not participated in. But because people feel they have dominated you, it's the issue of dominance and how human beings respond to dominance. They feel no, they must hit back, they must respond. Because with dominance comes helplessness. And if someone feels they're helpless, believe me, they will want to move out of they may not say it. That's where the term passive-aggressive comes from. Yes, where someone isn't shouting, but everything that they're doing is opposing you. But they're not saying it. What they're verbalizing is they're actually supporting you. But when you look at the actions, it's the complete opposite. So this is it. We feel that we're probably very dependent on the Chinese. And we feel that our leaders, we talk about and we've blamed enough. But now let's blame someone else, shall we? And the Chinese are taking the blame. And this coronavirus...
It didn't help matters.
No, it has not helped.
It has not helped matters at all. So is the fear... Then I say that the fear that we see is not really a fear. If we're going to speak specifically about Kenya, it's not really a fear. And then it cannot be justified if the basis is going to then be the virus and we don't want to get infected, because it's clear, again, if we look at the numbers and we hear just what the Deputy President of the World Health Organization said, out of Africa, the only Chinese that have been seen to be infected are in China. Out of Africa, it hasn't happened. Out of China, it hasn't happened. Nowhere in the world has there been a Chinese national infected outside of Hubei and Wuhan.
The reactions that have been reported in Kenya, that's what you call stigma.
This is it, and this is stigma is dangerous in terms of
deadly.
In terms of what you then can do.
Oh, it's deadly.
The Chinese folks are here. It seems from all indications, if we look at the infrastructure projects that are happening around the world, whether they be for government or whether they be for private sector, the Chinese are here to stay. With the SGR, they're not leaving anytime soon, and the stigma could grow into something that would be quite terrible if it is not nipped in the bud now.
I would like to see, I'm actually interested in observing whether, Chinese eateries are very popular.
Yes, and they've mushroomed over the last 5 years. Every nook and cranny, you will find one.
Yes, and they serve good food. Now, I'd like to see how this is going to play out, because in China, one of the things that is clearly happening is that people who own restaurants are suffering, especially if they're family-owned businesses. What is also happening is that with these businesses, many of them are now no longer serving people food at the premise. You can walk in, don't touch anything, make an order, they'll deliver it to you.
True.
Yes. So, if you look at this particular problem, let's pause. Ask yourself, any atrocity that you've seen, now we're going to the extreme. We are looking at what happened in Germany and Austria and places like Poland during the period that led to World War II. Germany was suffering from problems that had arisen from the reparations that had been demanded of them by the nations they had fought against. Remember, the economy suffered greatly. Now, who did their nationalistic leaders blame the poverty on? Jews.
The Jews, of course.
Was it true? No. But how far did it spread, and how easily did people believe it, and how did that group of people suffer?
In Kenya, it could be... Look, even if you see... And this is the thing, because the optics of it does something for you. You're in Kenya, and you see somebody on the side of the road roasting maize, and he's a Chinese national. You're going to think, my goodness, they brought the SGR, they did all these other things, and then even to the point whereby the small menial jobs that Kenyans should be able to do, somebody is taking over. It plays on your psyche. Unfortunately now, The stigma then attached to that is that, you know what, then now on top of that, they come and bring a disease into this country that we are not able to deal with. That's where the stigma is. And it is very, very, very dangerous if we don't deal with. We should. I mean, we just came off the discussion about tribalism. Of course, that is within the country and the tribes that then are known to this country. But then other people who are coming from outside also, I mean, we've welcomed them. We have welcomed them by virtue of the fact that we come in and say, do business, or that Kenya is open for business to China. You welcome their people as well. And I'm saying that the levels at which we've seen, for what we saw on social media yesterday coming out, we're teeter-tottering on some dangerous ground here, getting to the point whereby you're hating a whole group of people because the thinking is that they could be infected with something that in this sense they actually have not been reported to have brought into the country. It's an excuse, and that's what I'm saying. It's an excuse that's being used right now to perpetuate these feelings of animosity that could turn into something terrible, and they are there.
The thing is, we've had them. Why do you think we had a problem in 2007? And why do you think that the utterances such as the ones we're speaking of are dangerous and must be condemned? Because it's not just igniting, they further sentiments that we know already exist. And why do they exist? The reason why, for the best, if the community of central Kenya called the Kikuyu did not prove to be as good business people as they are, and prominently so, I doubt very much if such a focus would be on them.
The stereotype wouldn't stick.
No, it wouldn't stick.
Of course it wouldn't.
But because of the commercial success, and because of their numbers, two things. People from the Asian community have business successes. Kenyans from Northeastern Province have equal successes. Why are they not stigmatized? Why are they not picked on?
That's a question that we can come and dissect even further. But
again,
for now...
for now, you see, I'm going to the same thinking. People will, if the Chinese were here and they were here as refugees, no one would pick on them.
No, but they didn't come asking for help. In this case, they offered the help.
And provided help.
Siti, tell us a little bit about today's proverb before we look into traffic.
Well, very simply this. A monkey believes his bushy eyelashes lost him his beauty.
We're going to unpackage that in a short while. For now, let's look at the situation on the roads. All right. Still moving very slowly along Mombasa Road today. You'll get into the city centre. You can then use the turnoff that goes towards Bagavi Way. Not so bad as you get to the city mortuary roundabout. Ngong Road traffic today is quite the mess. And this, of course, started as far back as Naivasha Road. So it's not as clear as you'd like it to be. It's moving, though, very, very slowly. Thika Road today coming into the city centre using the Globe Cinema roundabout. Slow, but it's moving. Coming off of Western's, not so much of an issue. Things have evened out there more or less. We'll let you know what it looks like, but for now things haven't really things have remained unchanged rather. If you see something that we should know about, do let us know. Spice FM KE, give us a call on 0719-012-600. Traffic looking good, except where we have the normal issues that we do on Thika Road, Mombasa Road. If you see anywhere else, do not hesitate to let us know.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
We tuned into Kenya's biggest conversation. This is
done
the
right.
Situation Room this morning.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
On YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. In the studio this morning, Siti Muga and myself, Nduoko, we're looking at the coronavirus and clear to me this morning that it has presented an opportunity when we look at the stigma side of things for Kenyans to talk about the fact that they're not really happy with the presence of the Chinese in this country, and the virus then now being, in my opinion, a scapegoat to say that actually we're not really happy with your presence here. And then on top of that, you bring us this disease and this virus that then again with that we're not really happy with, and it has provided a perfect opportunity. If we're looking at the underbelly of the issue, it's definitely something that needs to be taken into thought and said, okay, well, we could be teetering, or we could be playing at the mouth of something quite dangerous here if you're not careful about some of the stories that come out, some of the things that we fuel by, in this case, as you would call them, the Chinese brothers and sisters that with whom we should live in harmony with.
What has the government done, really? Have you seen the government making any moves to stem this, to castigate people and tell them this is nonsense? Have you heard anything? Any statement coming from the government?
This is one effect of the lack of communication, because the lack of something actually provides a situation that is quite worse.
The lack of communication again here is a symptom. It's incompetence. Surely you can see there's a problem brewing here and you're doing nothing about it. And you know very well what you ought to do. Look, when Rwanda was beginning its steps towards regaining the prominence it had and revamping its economy, Kenya was one of the countries that lent a hand, and as a result there were many Kenyans in Rwanda. And similar complaints were heard coming from Rwanda, that these Kenyans are taking over. We've had similar complaints being reported coming from Tanzania, the same. In Rwanda, the president put a halt to that discussion and said, folks,
we know where this kind of thing can take us, so just stop it now.
Yes, but also they said, learn from these people. They're saying they're doing things, you learn, understand what they're doing, and get to do it better. It is your country after all. Get to do it. But whenever you find such a thing happening, and the stance that is taken is that you further the flaming of that particular blame, then it means that you are actually encouraging something that will later come around to bite you. Those sentiments will start with these people from another country. Those people will go back to their country.
They'll eventually leave. I mean, they're not here for good. Yes, right? They will go back.
Yes, and the sentiments will remain. Who do you think they're going to target those sentiments on, if not their own? Because all you'll require is someone who seems to be doing something that you're not doing or better, and you find a reason to blame. Now, this is something that must be stemmed. The moment it rears its head, it must be chopped off. You don't allow it to even breathe air, so long as you see it. Because if you don't, it is the same sentiment that brought about 2007. Same sentiment. It's the same sentiment that we've been discussing that brings this same. And the reason why they get to that point and become fire-breathing dragons is that at the time they could have been controlled or brought to a halt, they were not.
The time is now to actually do something about this. And I think...
act decisively and firmly.
It's now, because of the fact that a lot of these sentiments or these expressions are not based on any kind of fact. And we keep playing this clip by the WHO, and it may seem like there's no reason for it. But it is clear, in the initial time he was giving the numbers, he was talking about the statistics, countries from where we saw the problem, cases in countries whereby we saw infections having been. And I think a lot of times we make decisions, or we say things based on some kind of information that we have. Rumors come whereby there could be an element of truth, but the whole truth is not taken into consideration. And then I come and I peddle it to you, and by the time it gets back, pardon the pun, but it becomes a game of Chinese telephone, right? By the time the message gets to the final person, how it originally started is completely different. So when you're not feeding people with information, this is what we get, the sentiment going around the country now that Chinese have brought the 239 passengers that came off that plane, as opposed to the government telling us that, this is actually what happened with them. We have it going around that they're wandering around Nairobi or other parts of the country having been infected with this virus.
What they should
Nobody knows, because nobody has said. And it takes us to these dangerous levels whereby stigma is here, stereotypes are here, right here with us, and it could cause a potentially dangerous situation by virtue of the words that people speak that could throw yourself into, bilateral issues.
What they ought to consider, if you're talking Chinese, this is now what you call contact tracing. people who do business with China, people who are known to have gone to Wuhan, even before this particular virus broke out. There are many things that one can do that would actually inform people so that your reaction to this particular problem is actually informed.
I think we need to hear from the WHO again in terms of what I'm saying here right now at this point. Those numbers are important for us to hear, and I think we'd like to play that clip. And I think John is going to put it up for us now.
The number of cases in China continues to decline. And yesterday, China reported 206 cases of COVID-19 to WHO. The low since 22nd January. Only 8 cases were reported outside Hubei province yesterday. Outside China, a total of 8,739 cases of COVID-19 have been reported to WHO from 61 countries with 127 deaths. In the last 24 hours, there were almost 9 times more cases reported outside China than inside China. The epidemics in the Republic of Korea, Italy, Iran, and Japan are our greatest concern. The Republic of Korea has now reported more than 4,200 cases and 22 deaths, meaning it has more than half of all cases outside China. However,
Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, and telling us about those numbers, looking at a decrease in the number of cases that we see coming out of China. And this is what we say, that information then needs to be given about what the situation on the ground actually is. And unfortunately, a lot of the sentiment that we see in Kenya is being fueled by lack of information, in this case, if it can be. And that the tinder is there ready and the match is being struck on something that was latent even before the entrance of Corona. But Corona has presented the perfect opportunity to have these come to the fore. And that people in Kenya don't like the fact that the Chinese have come and basically taken over wherever it comes to jobs, menial or major, whether it comes to discussions as China standing in as a helping hand to the government, macro or micro.
The Chinese are
people don't like it.
The Chinese are not the problem; they're the symptom.
This is what they see as a problem.
No,
people should be digging further and say what it is that our government has not been able to do for us in terms of providing a conducive environment to provide these jobs that we say the Chinese have that Kenyans say the Chinese have taken, or to provide. Why is it that the SGI is being built and that it's the Chinese engineers who come in and do it?
Who is likely to complain about the Chinese taking over? Someone who has a job or someone who doesn't have?
Somebody who doesn't have a job, of course.
Yes,
you don't find the people with jobs complaining.
Is it the job of the Chinese to provide our people with jobs? No, it's the government.
The person that
if
you could
see
who
are in Kenya, it's because we have
allowed them in.
Yes, and there are good reasons why we have. It's not that our people don't know that the Chinese are not the problem. They do know.
But when
they are an easier, softer target
to vent.
You can't get to your leader who made that decision. You can't get to the person who's supposed to implement government decisions to help you find a job or to help you get credit to conduct your business. Where are you going to find them? You can't find them to help build the road that you know very well was budgeted for and there was money provided. So this Chinese who unfortunately has decided to sell maize in Kenya
will be the object of your event.
Yes, because selling maize means you are doing really genuinely badly. And yes, it is. How many people are going to buy maize? To buy maize, people need to have money. Mm-hmm. How long are you going to be sitting by the roadside? You don't sit by the roadside because you have 10 options and you figure, well, let me
sit on the roadside for today.
Maize. Yeah. No, it isn't. It's because any other thing that you may have thought of isn't working. So this is what you're going to. So if the Chinese represents in any way or mirrors your disenfranchisement and the helplessness you feel, that is the person you are going to attack. Ask yourself, any place where you've had xenophobia, as you say, do you really mean to tell me that these people had genuine grievances, like in South Africa, against the people they were attacking? The answer is no.
No.
They had a government that they felt should have done certain things for them, and that's why they were in the state of mind they were in. But these people were closer, and because these people represented other people other than themselves and seemed to be doing okay, soft target, direct target.
Available target,
and also helpless, because you know very well they don't come from your country. You know very well that some of them may not even have all the right papers.
You can even insult them at some point, they'll go.
You can even do, that's the point. You know this. Do you hear them breaking into shops in high-end malls and taking things? No. But what do you hear? People who they attack are people who are struggling like them. Why these people? Why that particular? Because they're closest to you, and in your mind, if they're from another country and doing well here, then it means that there must be something they're taking from you. Now, that narrative is spread by the politicians. Let's talk about reality. Think, for instance, do you know, for instance, that Iran, since the year 1906, has always had one seat in their parliament reserved for Jews? Well, there are actually 5 such positions. Well, it's inconsequential, but it's a fact. And nobody even talks about it. It's not consequential. Why? You've never heard of Jews being persecuted in Iran. Remember, Iranians are Persians. And if you look at the history, Persia at some point or the other had taken over that land that the Jews came from. But things changed, people moved back, they have an association. Now, there are facts that make it imperative, once you have them, for you to make a certain decision. And in the absence of which, you will freely make some really, really silly decisions. If we have, in this particular country, issues unresolved about the education sector, we have issues unresolved about the after effects of flooding, which is still taking place.
Right.
We have issues unresolved about the locusts. We have issues unresolved about the huge amount of debt that we have. Issues unresolved about money going to the counties. And then now we throw in the coronavirus. And this
one more to topple this already leaning tower.
Yes, and I've left out other things. I simply thought I'd highlight those. You throw in the coronavirus, there is information that is not being passed on to the public, and you're seeing the government doing things they've done before when all these issues, you've heard ministerial statements, you've heard the government making statements, in some cases the president, the deputy make statements. Nothing changes apart from the statements having been made, and at best a commission being formed. Nothing changes. The situation that you're in the week before and the week prior remains a constant. Now, if you can push this blame onto someone else, it's easier.
And in this case, the Chinese then would be the victims in Kenya.
Soft target, easy target.
It's easy to find.
Yes.
They are the ones who then bear the brunt and are the victims. And I am saying if that is not put in check, we run the risk of getting into some very dangerous waters when it comes to a phobia of a people who may have no fault in terms of being now then made the victim of this particular hatred. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We're in the Situation Room talking coronavirus. We're going to open the phone lines in a bit and talk about the fear, founded or not. We're taking a break. We'll be back in a bit.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. 96.0 Spice FM. Nakuru. The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi. Broadcasting worldwide. Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
19012-600. Talking matters, coronavirus today and saying, I mean, again, coming with it that
Mornings
very clear.
Done right.
This virus
94.4 Spice FM.
Opportunity for Kenyans to vent about the fact that they're not really happy with the presence of, Chinese nationals in this country taking over would-be positions or would-be jobs. And this then has come to the fore because the hatred that we see can't just be, or the things that we've heard being said yesterday can't just be that these are people with the potential of carrying a virus and bringing it into this country, whereby information is very clear with what we've heard from the World Health Organization and what we see that the incidences or of infections are actually reducing in China, and that we don't have any Chinese national outside of China with this infection or with this virus, carrying this virus. But the hatred is there, it's rife. With the reports that we've seen, people very scared, taxi drivers not agreeing to carry Chinese nationals, changing on your app as a driver, changing it when you actually find out that the person coming in is a Chinese national, stepping into a lift and people stepping aside, thinking twice, which may be a natural response, thinking twice that you've seen huge numbers coming out of China and then you see a Chinese national. But I'm saying that we seem to be crossing over that tip where we say now, okay, we actually don't like this folk, and anywhere we see, they actually should not be in our space at all. That is where it becomes dangerous, and we should actually be very careful because worse things started with a lesser fire than this.
There's a difference between not liking them and fearing them. There's a difference. I may not like you, or my dislike for you may arise from my fear, because you represent something that paints me in a light that I not particularly want. The question you want to ask is, if the Chinese can do it, why are we not doing it?
These jobs that they say they have come in to take, or that this presence which they were suddenly fulfilling, the certain things that they're doing or not doing, how is it that they've been able to do it and then Kenyans have not? That definitely is the question, but nobody wants to deal with that at that point, because here you have somebody who can be a sounding board for your vent. You're not thinking. Unfortunately, in cases like this, people are not thinking rationally, CT. People don't think like, all right, actually, I should think about it. When it comes to what the government has been able to do for me or not, I'm not really thinking about that. I'm thinking about, here is somebody who has taken up a job that could potentially be mine or that of somebody else. And they've been invited in, and nobody is doing anything to make sure that they don't. And then the element of protectionism for the people of the country does not come into play. And that's what people are out here about.
Or you simply go into the blame mode where you want to find someone to blame for whatever problems you may think you have. I will move aside and not even look at the coronavirus as an entity, but look at what else we need to understand about the coronavirus and other flu-related influenza. You see, you haven't been told so far who is most likely to actually contact the virus.
I think we've been told the elderly, the older people.
Elderly is from what age?
From about between 70 and 90 is what they said.
Now,
they're more susceptible to contracting
there are
the
reports
virus.
that will tell you 50, from about, some will tell you 60. Do they mention young children?
No, actually.
Yes, but they should, because young children have a weaker immune system. So if you're talking about diseases, they're most likely, there are reports that will tell you that in the third world countries, many deaths of children under the age of 5 are caused by influenza related. Yes. Meaning there's something that becomes respiratory, and as a result, young children die. They're also not telling you about women who are pregnant, because if you're talking about influenza, there's also that likelihood that women who are expectant are more likely. Okay, they're also not telling you that people who have chronic medical conditions are also likely to have a problem or are more susceptible to an attack from such a virus.
Let's hear from Lydia. Lydia, good morning. How are you doing? Hello? Hello, Lydia. Good morning.
Good morning, Joe.
Yes.
I wanted to contribute about this coronavirus. It's now the talk of the world.
Yes, it is.
When we were children, we played so energetically. And when we were sick, we would suddenly be under our blanket And my grandmother, the first thing she would notice we are sick, she would touch our forehead and she would say, you got a very high temperature. That is what kills, high temperature. Don't wait to travel to hospital for the doctor to measure your temperature with a thermometer. She would quickly take a wet cloth and place it on our forehead and to bring the temperature down. We had measles, we had whooping cough, we had flu, we had in our lifetime as children. She never took us to the hospital. She would just keep us in bed and keep the temperature down with a wet cloth. And then after a week, even measles, after a week she would boil a big sufria of water with tea leaves and give us a bath. She never respected Dettol, tea leaves. And we are alive today, many years later.
Yes.
She knew that high temperature kills. Our blood cells work on high temperature because they are also struggling with the bad things that have come in. So, and I also think if we are many in the house and one person is sick, drink the tea till it is empty and let it dry for a while.
So you have your own cure for this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes, my own view. And then drink your tea right to the end, even the last tea leaves, and let it dry, and then maybe attempt to wash it. Don't pour half your tea into the sink, and then the other one pours half their waste into the bin. Eat everything to the last crumb, and let the plate dry completely, and then attempt to wash it.
Right.
Otherwise, we are producing more and more onto the other. Thank you, Spice FM.
Thank you, Lydia.
The report that we've had coming from China regarding this, and what I was saying is, the Chinese report this, and this is why reporting is important and information is important. If you talk about influenzas, what I said about children under the age of 5 is true, considered to be generally true. But out of the 44,672 cases that they've examined in China, there are no deaths reported for children under 10. None. So the coronavirus is unique in that sense.
Right.
And among the men, where there's a high mortality rate, they're saying that this may actually be explained by high rate of smoking among Chinese men. Meaning there are details that are given that would be important. But if you look at the figures again in China, we are saying that the overall mortality rate is now 2.3%. Okay? The worldwide rate is, as they say, something around 1.something%. Now, the diseases that they say are more or less predisposition due to such problems are cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, respiratory diseases, hypertension, and cancer, if any.
Let's hear from Solomon in Mombasa. Hello, Solomon, good morning.
Morning.
How? Yes.
I'm good.
Yes.
Corona.
Yes, it's taking the world by storm, isn't it?
Until a company releases a song, it will end.
Oh, okay.
Now, so basically, I'll first of all blame the government's mode of communication. They should be giving us the right information in all various platforms. So, like for example, if you go to your phone, if you go to like this app called TikTok, the first thing is they give you the symptoms and how to manage it. Yes? So once we get that right information, it will be easy for us to stop this stigmatization. Then secondly, we have not had a case in Kenya. So why still harassing the Chinese?
So according to you, we need to be able to, if we have the right information, then we are able to stop the stigma. And if we have the right information, we would understand that there are no Chinese who actually have it in the country, and then we would be able to stop this stigma again that way.
Then of course, yes, governments give us right information. Then our doctors, what are they doing? Are they just fleecing people money?
That's a question.
Yeah, because they have those associations and organizations for doctors. They should tell us, because this is their area of field. Yes.
All right.
They should come out, and they don't need the government's approval. They say this is how it is, this is how you manage, and when you find these cases, this is what you're going to do.
This is what you should do.
Simple.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that, Solomon. Asante sana. Well, I think that comes out, CT, doesn't it? Like, if information is clear, just like what you were giving us then of cases, whether you're looking at age brackets across board, if the information is clear, perhaps that then helps to reduce the kind of fear and panic that we see. Because information then, as the popular cliche goes, that information then is power. Knowledge is power. If I'm armed with the information, then I am then able to know how to react, especially with something like this that really has been panic mode around the world. So information is key in all of this and sharing it, and in an honest form, as it is, as it's known, without fear, favor, or any kind of prejudice.
A century ago, something as simple as influenza ended up killing something like a fifth of the planet's population, around 50 million people. Right now, influenza kills 500,000 people every year.
Every year.
Just every year. Now, people know about influenza. That's why they take flu shots, meaning you sort of like protect yourself against the flu. Why? When the season for flu comes. But that's seasonal influenza, every season. But then there are more dangerous strains of the same influenza.
Can we? I know you're on a roll, but I want to take a call from Esther. CT as we go. Esther in Kilifi, good morning. Hello, Esther. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Esther.
Yes, Esther.
Habari zenu?
Hatujambo, hatujui wewe.
Nina kohoa na nina sneeze na sitaki kusalimia watu.
Uko na homa?
So scared.
Ni homa.
Uko na homa?
Niko na homa, sio flu ama corona.
Is it the first time umekuwa na homa?
No, that's a doctor's prescription, secrecy between patient and doctor.
Precisely. Okay. So it means you've had it before. So tuendelee na wakati huu, yes.
Tuendelee na wakati, asante. So my contribution would be the stigma that is coming up. Most of it is just caused by grown-ups. Children really are really not like so worried. In fact, it's the parents who are going to them and, hey, when you go to school, make sure you take water, make sure you clean your hands every other, whatever. And you see, you cannot have control over the kids even when they are playing and talking. They even touch their noses and touch each other. And of course, now the parents have the biggest phobia. Or rather the grown-ups, not parents, the grown-ups. And then there's also an influence on social media when it comes to treatment. Unaona hizi remedies. Unaambiwa fanya hii, fanya hii, fanya hii. And of course, now the government comes in as the big figure to say, okay, we are under control and everything. You can remember even those communications that came up that were fake.
Yeah.
So people are posting on WhatsApp. It's so tiring and fatiguing to read things. Mara, it is this, it is where, it is where. It is actually, we had the two people from Bahari Beach that were quarantined. And everyone in Mombasa was like, hey,
really scared.
That conversation, Kenyans should just go above some things, because when I see in other countries, they are really talking maturely and not talking jokingly. We cannot joke about some things. It's like there's a lot of cholera. Can you imagine? People are even making cartoons. So there's a lot of
information that needs to be shared.
And it's reaching the kids also.
Got
it.
So
it's just at home. Just tell your children, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everything is under control. If you have to pray about it. It has not really spread that much. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And people should just grow up in conversations. I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Esther, for that. Thanks for calling into the Situation Room this morning. All right, Cici, we're going to come back and maybe wrap this up in a bit. But right now we have to take a look at what's happening on the roads at the top of the hour. And we'll continue this conversation in the Situation Room in a short bit. All right, still seeing the remnants of early morning traffic on Mombasa Road this morning, moving very slowly right around to the JKIA turnoff and then all the way to Cabanas and then coming through to the General Motors. But after that, it is not so bad. There's a crackdown that's going on Langata Road, and that might be the reason why we see slowed down traffic. There's an accident at the junction of Riara Road and Naivasha Road involving a motorcycle and another vehicle. So there's a traffic snarl up just because of that. Kiambu Road, of course, now trying to connect with Thika Road. Very, very slow right now. It's quite the mess. Wayaki Way then has opened up into some more traffic this morning, guys, where we thought it was a lot easier, now has become much worse. So it's bumper to bumper kind of everywhere you look. It'll open up in a bit. We're getting round about the time where people would have reached where they're going. So panic ye not too much. 0719-012-600 is how you can reach us. On Spice FM KE on Twitter, let us know what you see. If it gets worse, we'll see if we can find alternatives based on what you tell us. Let's keep it moving, guys. It is Wednesday.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up.
This is the Situation Room. Ndroko with you this morning, and City Muga. We are wrapping up the conversation on coronavirus. Of course, not wrapping it up permanently because it's still right front and center in the world. But before we go to, because CT, there was some interesting information that you wanted to finish with us. But before we go to that, the proverb of the day. Today's proverb.
The proverb for the day is the same as the one I mentioned early on in the day. A monkey believes his bushy eyelashes cost him his beauty. Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course, we are going to unpack that later. But for now, still continuing with matters coronavirus and talking about the stigma that we now face and the information that is absolutely necessary to be put out there to avoid some of the things that we have seen now pop up. And you were giving us some figures, some information that's necessary to have at this point.
If you talk about flus or influenza, and the one similarity you will find with this particular coronavirus, that the COVID-19, is, say, the manner in which it is passed on. Now, what is also unique about influenza is that it's unique with many viruses. They mutate, meaning, given the genetic makeup, they change. And that's one of the reasons why they're actually able to get into our immune system. And it is for that reason that almost every year you have to have a new form of a flu vaccine. Now, these are things that are understood but not out there for people to know. If I give the example, for instance, in this country, this has nothing to do with disease, it has to do with plants. We have a department of government called KARI, the Kenya Agricultural Research Institute, and they come up with all manner of seeds that are heat resistant, wind resistant, flood resistant, that are drought resistant. But you will find that many people do not know about these, and so they cannot get them or even plant them. And then they marvel at how certain people seem to do well. Mm-hmm. Those who do well understand that if you take some of these seeds and plant them, and you plant them correctly, and we have government officers who actually ensure that you get to understand this. In a time past, they were called extension officers. Mm-hmm. They would move around and educate people at a local level. So what it then means is that a farmer was able to produce for their own consumption and even store them for a rainy day. But when you don't, then you'll keep using the same seed you've used for the longest time. And it's not that you'll have the same output. It'll actually reduce. Mm. Because when these things are formulated scientifically, what they then understand is that they ensure that the seed reaches its maximum potential. When you bring that same thinking into medical care, you then need people who actually understand that particular field and the experts. And that's why you've heard me repeatedly saying, we need to hear from people who are experts in this field.
To be able to dissect it.
Yes, because they don't need to think. They know it. They will be telling you. It isn't a statement that has been prepared by someone to be read so that we understand. That one needs to be done because the government needs to tell us its position. But beyond that, any other conversation that takes place, it has to be with people who actually know about these things, understand them, so that when they talk to you about suggestions, they have the wealth of experience and knowledge And what they're telling you is what they know will work. And they'll also give you information that will help you deal with it. Because there's what the government does, and there's what we as individuals at a local level, at a personal level, at a family level have to deal with.
Right. But then again, what we're seeing is, and I think we see a lack of information, a lack of sharing, whether it comes from an expertise level or whether it comes from, whatever it could be, is that people are not getting this information. And so they're able to come to conclusions on their own. And this is what we see that is happening or playing out now, which again, I repeat, in this case, that it is not safe. It is not healthy. If anything, it is dangerous. That a group of people then essentially would be targeted with these messages that come out that they are the ones who are bringing it, and they then also bear the brunt of the responsibility of carrying that stigma around, unfortunately.
You see, if you draw a parallel, for instance, a very weak parallel, but a parallel nonetheless, of the problems we had emanating from the Narok BBI meeting and the utterances, that same feeling that we are being overwhelmed, feeling it's exacerbated by the politician, we are being overwhelmed. It's the same thing. If you hear of the debts, what we owe, their presence, and now they're actually selling maize, it amounts to we are being enslaved as we watch. And then people react. But when information that is correct and timely is constantly given, then you lessen that effect.
Yeah.
In fact, you lessen to the point where you can almost do away with it.
Right, so we've been discussing issues coronavirus. We're going to switch gears now and then come back and completely localize things. We will talk in depth now about what we've seen play out during the fight against corruption, and certain steps that it might be have been perceived that steps have been taken in a backward direction when it comes to the fight against corruption. And that's what we're going to go into now right here in the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, and if you're just joining us, we're now looking at what has been called the clash of the giants, and we saw that when we started off this morning. Tensions between the DPP, Nurdin Haji, and DCI boss George Kinoti. The boil over in court after the prosecutor disowned charges drafted by investigators against the KPA boss, prompting the magistrate for free suspect. Now, this is one case, but if you want to look at the general way in which things are done in the fight against corruption, and it seems, we've had conversation after conversation about what should be done, what seems to be the problem, where is it that we see there being a bottleneck, why is it that justice then cannot be expensed, why then does it take so long, are there gains that have been made, and if these gains have been made, why are they not being communicated adequately? Interestingly enough, Kenyans still baying for blood. They want the big fish to be caught, and not just caught, but then be convicted and then sent to jail. But this doesn't seem to happen. The fight against corruption has made some good, made some good mileage over time. Over the last 18 months, we've seen that quite a lot has been done, if you actually have to go and dig out and see. But here we are seeing where two offices or two agencies, essentially, that being the office of the DPP and the office of the DCI, should be working together to make sure that this fight actually moves through the prosecution system, through the courts, and getting something done. And then we see a clash like this, whereby one says, we've done our due diligence, we've done what needed to be done, and we've presented this case before court. The DPP says that is all well and good. However, we also need to look into this, and we need to do our part. And then we will then agree or disagree. But in the meantime, the people that have been charged in this case then will be allowed to go for now until we're able to bring a case solid enough that can stand the test of time through the courts. To many already being seen as, all right, there's a clash. And this mileage that we have gained over time then will be watered down. And it means that the fight against corruption has taken a major setback in all of this. Is this the case? Is this what's happening? And how long then will it be seen to be the case? Is the fight against corruption, has it taken a blow by all of this? By a lot of what people would see? Yes, it has, because of the fact that these two agencies who should be working together seem to be clashing over something that should be quite easy to see.
We're discussing, in essence, the difference between what we perceive justice to be and what it actually is. What would, in the mind of a day-to-day Mwananchi Kenyan, believe to be justice?
Somebody's arrested, they're taken to court, they're convicted, they go to jail.
Actually arrested and go to jail directly.
The court system, if we could do away with that.
Then they're reminded you have to go to court
system.
Okay,
okay. So this might take a little bit longer, all right?
Yes, and when you go to court, there are court processes. And the details of court processes relies on one thing. You may accuse someone and you may even have evidence, but then you have to prove that that evidence is true. Simple. Therein lies the conundrum, because it is always not that easy. You may even know something, but you cannot prove it. And then remember, we in the media seem to have determined to present a certain picture of the DCI, DPP, and the judiciary constantly being on loggerheads. But we also forget that in the same media, there are reports of, say, the judiciary having issues of their own. For instance, the judicial officers, page 12 of the Standard. Officers accuse JSC of injustice in promotions. And in the picture is the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Anamadi. It tells you that we actually do have a fairly robust system, much as we criticize it, that A, brings out issues and even makes some credible attempt at tackling these issues. Now, the question that you ask, do I think the DCCI or the office of the DCCI is doing what they should do? I'd say yes, resoundingly so, yes. Do I think the DPP is doing what? The answer again would be yes. Do I think the judiciary is doing its job? Again, I would say yes. And then I'd say now, having said yes, let us ask, what is it that happens in these three departments of government that give them the bad name that seems to be doing the rounds?
But this is what is doing the rounds, actually, in this case. There seems to be some finger pointing. Now, understandably, there are these two faces, whether it is George Kinoti and Nuruddin Haji, who are the face of these two offices. But they have officers who work under them, who are investigators, who are officers in whatever sector under these offices, under their auspices. The problem that we are being faced with right now is that there are a number of cases that the DCI investigates, right? By law, they are mandated then to take these files to the office of the DPP. The problem now that is being called a setback, which people are being asked to look at with a bit of scrutiny, is that there are delays at the DPP where these files have been taken.
There are claims that there are delays.
At the DPP where these files have been taken, and they are taking too much time before they are now taken to court. This is what is being seen as the setback. And not just one case, CT. They're looking at a number from the KRA case that was brought to them. This was said to have been taken directly to the courts, bypassing the DPP. So it seems that there's some kind of autonomy and authority that the DPP is trying to continually remind the DCI about in terms of how the law is supposed to be followed. You have a case, you do your due diligence, bring it to us, and we'll take it from there. Whereas the DCI is saying, look, this is a hook, line, and sinker. We should be able to land this plane very quickly. But then it goes to the DPP, and then things seem to stall.
Yeah, but
this is what could be seen as why a lot of the big fish, or even in some cases the small fish, then are not being, justice is not being dispensed.
Is it not the same complaint that the DPP's office seem to have against the judiciary?
Against the judiciary. And this is the thing, that we're then passing on responsibility. By the time it gets to the DPP and the DPP talks about, all right, we're ready to go, then the judiciary steps in and it becomes now one whole circus of something is not happening at the point in which it should happen, Let's look at the weather and we'll come back and discuss this a little bit further. Looking at what is happening in the fight against corruption. Are we at a setback? Is there something that needs to be done about it? We'll talk about it a little bit more when we come out of this break.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
It's warming up in Nairobi at 19 degrees, partly cloudy conditions. We're going to see some rain later with highs of 26 and lows of 16. In Nakuru as well at 19 degrees. Rain will come in with highs of 27 and lows of 15. It's 18 degrees in Eldoret. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 23 and lows of 13. Already light showers in Kisumu will go into thunderstorms with highs of 28 and lows of 19. Mostly cloudy conditions in Mombasa at 29 with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Warm day in Malindi will go into rain with highs of 32 and lows of 27. In Nyeri at 19 degrees, showers expected later with highs of 26 and lows of 15. In Dar es Salaam, thunderstorms come in with a high of 31 and a low of 24. It's mostly cloudy in Kampala. Thunderstorms expected with highs of 25 and lows of 21. 16 degrees and mostly sunny in Johannesburg with highs of 23 and lows of 12. Rounding things out in Lagos, mostly sunny conditions at 27. Rain expected later to cool things down though with a high of 35 and lows of 27.
Have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Breathing life into the 90s.
This is the Situation Room, and we're talking matters against the war against corruption. Ndwoko in the studio with CT Muga this morning. As we look at it, CT, it seems to be a locking of heads, a locking of horns rather, in the case of what needs to be done or what is not done. And if we say that I'm presenting cases on a regular basis, but nothing is done, and it seems to be that will be the train as we go from the DCI to the DPP then say, here we go with the case, and we take it forward, and the judiciary says, well, we have a backlog. This thing is going to take time. In terms of the expedition of justice, it will not be as quickly as people want it.
Why there has been that insistence that the DPP must look through these things? Why? Because we had many cases that were thrown out before it even went very far. Insufficient evidence. You are asked, here is what you have on your charge sheet. Evidence. We're still working on it. Out. Gone. The media reported very many such cases. But where the misreporting comes in is you have this disagreement that is out in the public domain. It's out in the open. And suddenly it's a falling out. It's a disagreement. They happen. It doesn't mean people are falling out. In this very studio, we disagree on views. I'm even now disagreeing with you. Are we falling out?
Are we falling out? But this is the thing. The sentiments that are made are not that come through or that are being reported are not made up. It's not fictitious or a figment of our imagination. These are things that people are actually saying, coming out of a senior DCI official. These are cases touching on people and their rights and need urgent action.
Fine.
they need urgent action.
Yes.
It is not being done. And
it's a disagreement.
They take fault with the DPP. And
it's a disagreement.
Historically, it is not just today on this particular case. They've said this has been the trend. This is what we see. By the time we get something or a file coming out of the office of the DPP, it takes forever. It is not taking the time with which we are investigating and bringing these cases to. We had the head of the EACC here the other day telling us how many cases? 3,000 and something is what they're dealing with, what they've brought out.
Whereas developed countries deal with 20
in a year.
So
right? So because of the fact that we should be able to put these through, they choose the cases that they're going to work on to avoid things like this. By the time I do something and present it on your desk, right? And then I'm waiting for you to then now move it forward. It takes time. It would have it would have a frustrating effect on those who are carrying out these initial criminal investigations.
That's the job that they're supposed to do. That's
right,
the job
but the job is supposed to be seen end to end.
Yes,
so you can imagine if you get stuck somewhere in the middle, there's an element of frustration that's going to come through, which you would see clearly as having a hampering effect on this fight against corruption. Absolutely.
No.
On the war against corruption, absolutely.
If that is not true.
Yes, it's true.
If all the cases that the DCI had taken to the DPP had not moved forward, then it would be true. But we have cases, they say, since April last year. Is it all the cases? No. So there are cases that have gone through. Until and unless we know that a very large number of cases that are taken to the DPP don't move forward, then it is not true.
It's taken attention because top government officials have planned a meeting between Kinoti and Haji to take place sometime next week. So it's a little bit more than just the ruffling of feathers here. It's something that clearly needs attention because they're saying this thing that we've prescribed nationally and even talked about internationally, we have the government, we have the president himself talking to, development partners just a couple of days ago saying the fight against corruption is going along very smoothly. We've made fantastic gains. And here we are with two prime offices that are actually vehicles for this fight, having to have
was that a false statement that we heard?
Of course it wasn't a false statement. But in this case, here we have these two offices prime agencies in getting this fight moving and keeping it moving are saying that they're not able to move at a pace that is acceptable until somebody has to call them to sit down and say, all right, guys, what do we
acceptable
have?
To
and
whom?
How are we going to be able to deal with
acceptable to whom?
Top government officials.
We have a problem, and this is a problem in this country where there is the assumption that things must work in a way that someone perceives
a source within the DCI. If the issues are not addressed, we will lose the plot. We will lose everything. I know they will agree after the planned meeting. So you say that loggerheads, there's been a fallout since December is when we started seeing these things start popping up. It needs to be agreed. If something is being agreed on, that means there is a point at which there is a disagreement. Or there is a point at which we have not come to consensus. Why is it an issue only when we're talking about
high-profile cases? Because are you telling me people have not been jailed since April? They have. Are you telling me that all these cases have not involved the DCI at some point? They have. Are you telling me some of these cases did not go to the DPP? They did. So
by the time
we had this very week and last week in the papers, there was this debate about the Media Council and the Guild, the Editors Guild, and there was a complaint that the headlines that we have can be misleading. There was that disagreement. One group felt this, the other group felt that. Okay? Now, if we're talking about the space that has been opened up by the media, we would say the media has truly opened the space. But what was the Media Council doing? In my opinion, they're calling them out and saying, some of these headlines you have are a bit racy. They tend to be more sensational than they are.
They should be.
Yes, okay? So, and they were being told, look, folks, let's rein it in a little bit. But the Editors Guild had their response. If there have been problems that are simmering, we actually don't know what they are. Because...
Don't know, right.
No, we don't know. There is what we are told or what people suggest is the problem. But as it presented, it is not the problem between Haji and Kinoti.
No. I think it's a problem between their offices, and I think we can accept the fact
and
that
those issues
there's no
may
smoke
even
without
be
fire.
beyond them.
Yes, and there's no smoke without fire. By the time it came to December, and then these things started poking through the surface, we don't know how long it had been that they were discussing these things.
And also,
so by the virtue of the fact that it has come to the fore,
and not bring in the judiciary, and that's why I said, have people not been jailed? They have. Have people not been let go of? They have. That's the judiciary working, for heaven's sake. I am aware that we are overwhelmed with more scandals than the brain can contain at any moment in time. But let's not lose this major plot. Some of these things we say are not working actually work. It's just that the expectation exceeds the reality. There are only certain things that can be done. There are things that, honestly, with the situation that we have currently, cannot be done. So let's move away from the judiciary, DPP. Let's go to the executive and ask, what is it, apart from having set this thing in motion, and we seem to be moving, what is causing the roadblocks? What is causing the hindrances? This is Kenya. If it's a high-end case, high-profile case, usually it means it involves big shots and it involves a lot of money. What that immediately translates to, there will be attempts to influence that process in favor of those who've been accused. So, what are we dealing with? Because we know that corruption, as we call it, or even grand corruption, fights back. And these people who are in the judiciary, these people who are in the DPP's office, these people who are in the DCI's office are just Kenyans like all other Kenyans. And they have relatives, and they want the things other Kenyans want, and they're also susceptible to the sort of influences that other Kenyans are susceptible to.
At the risk of putting words in your mouth, I almost hear you saying that, you know what, this really isn't about process. This really isn't about there being a backlog or capacity or money. It's that because we see the small cases having been sorted out.
Speedy.
Right? Very quickly.
Speed.
It is the big cases where huge amounts of money are involved and somebody wants a piece of the pie, so they're not really interested in being expedient about this. Is this what you're saying?
Partly that I'm saying, but also remember, if you're talking about a high-profile case, you're talking about someone who has influence. And someone who has influence can speak to someone who can speak to someone who can speak to someone. So, these are the realities of the cases that we have. But if you're asking the question that, are we seeing progress? I'm saying yes. Because remember, we come from a background where big fish were never even arrested.
Oh, it never even came up for mention.
Yes, you'd say the thing that would happen, they might get transferred. Okay? And now we hear corruption cases are costly. Why? They involve big lawyers who charge big money. And they are able to delay, not using anything nefarious, just the court processes. Now, where the judiciary is blamed, why don't you put a halt to it, number one, and say, I want this thing done by this time? Because you can, within the law. Why is it that we haven't set up special cases? You can set up special courts and say, these courts will deal with this. It can be done. They'll tell us they don't have the funds. And I'd say then, let's take the issue up with the executive yet again.
So there's a deliberate effort to make sure that these cases actually don't see the light of day. Because if there was
a strong inclination in that direction.
If there was a desire to make sure, if there was will to make sure that these cases go through the prosecutorial process and make sure that all evidence is collected, the case goes through court in record time, it could actually be done.
We have a judicial system that's independent, and yet the funds are controlled by the treasury, and it's doled out as though they're giving out peanuts. How exactly do you expect the judicial system to work?
Let's answer that question when we come back after taking a look at the roads. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. We'll be back in a bit.
Online, mobile, and on radio. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz,
right,
neo soul, and nostalgic
ballad. Zone, unfortunately, you're not moving. I don't know what's going on there. We should have been officially out of traffic hour, but now we see that it is not happening today. Gong Road is still giving up those negative vibes today. Sorry, guys, not moving as quickly as you'd like either. As you get past, though, the dip towards the City Mortuary roundabout, you should be just fine. Langata Road moving very slowly, joining with the Southern Bypass. We see a little bit of a stop place right around the Carnival. Coming down, though, it should not be so bad. There was an accident earlier at the junction of Rian Road and Naivasha Road involving a couple of vehicles, but that's been cleared off now, so you should be able to move a lot smoother right around that area. Getting into the CBD today, folks, not so bad either. Off of Mombasa Road is getting much better. Uhuru Highway then right around the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, then getting into the CBD. A-okay. It's moving. It's slow, but it's moving. All right, Eastern and Southern bypasses still open, moving along quite slowly, but moving all the same. Spice FM KE, you have a little bit more time to let us know what you might see so that we can keep folks moving this morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
In the Situation Room, my name is Ndoko, in the studio with CT Muga, and we're looking at issues having to do with corruption. The fight against corruption been lauded over time, having, especially in the last 18 to 24 months, saying that, we've done some good work, good strides have been made. And I don't think that these reports that we see coming out is something that can just be glossed over. It is something that has been there. It's been a problem that people have been dealing with in terms of how long it takes for some of these things to be done. But yes, the application of will is something that's very important where this is concerned. And if we don't see that, it's just not going to happen. And so the sentiment that people would raise at some point where they say, okay, yeah, another big fish having been caught. What does that mean? It means that after some time, the case is going to fizzle out and it's not going to be there anymore. And so I hear you saying, CT, that, it's clear that without the political will, at a treasury where it's doling out peanuts, where it should actually be handing out a lot more, so that something can be done, or at least to be seen to be done, and it's not happening at that point. That's where the problem is. So all these little rumblings that we see, these little fires that are being spat out by the meeting that we'll see happen next week between the DCI and the office of the DPP, is just rumblings. The real problem is much further up the line.
It is. If you look at even the ruling, remember there was an earlier case where Manduku was released on a bail. Mm-hmm. Okay, this was by Justice Eric Ogola. If you look at the number of times this particular MD has actually been accused, he isn't the only one. There are others who are accused of misdeeds and mishandling, and they had a long stay in our facilities and our penal facilities. Okay, the best this guy has done is spend a night. This was just recently. Now, there's a point I'm getting at here. There are legal processes that must be followed. And this man is innocent until it is proven guilty. Proven. He's been accused. They say they have evidence. That's why you go to a judge or a magistrate to try and determine whether these things are actually true or not. But just because people feel that he is guilty doesn't mean he should be jailed. Just because we think and feel he is guilty. Because this is not just about Manduku. It is about other state corporation heads who have been accused of even huger sums and of bigger crimes. It's about ministers. It's about permanent secretaries. It's about principal permanent secretaries. It's about ministers. So these are cases that have been ongoing, and it's against this backdrop that people have this expectation or the feeling that nothing ever seems to get done.
And also fueled by the fact that we've seen the smaller cases then be dealt with some speed and alacrity, that someone say, oh, okay, this can actually work. This can actually work. So why can't you translate the same to these big hits, to these bigger cases?
It would work if you saw a case being speeded up and some big fish ending in jail. Then people would feel, aha, it actually works. This shoe fits all.
Then it seems these agencies don't get it.
They do get it.
So why then are we not seeing this happening?
Because following the legal process, this is the catch-22. If you're going to follow legal processes, they take time. That's the unfortunate thing.
But is it not
until
the conundrum for people, CT, is that the same legal process is applied when you have these smaller cases. You do.
Yes, but
it's
the
same.
Smaller cases, those are cases will not have these nice, smart lawyers who have a battery of researchers behind them who can actually hold the court ransom for a long time legally.
It's the people who don't matter, Abi, in the smaller cases.
No, it's the people who don't have money. You can matter, but if you don't have money,
you don't matter.
Well, look, it's a legal process. If you
don't have money, you don't matter.
If you engage legal minds who know how to work the system, of course, you will not have a hard time. We had a case against our CS in charge of the Ministry of Finance and his principal secretary. They are not at their desks. They are not in jail.
They're free?
They're not free. They're out on a bond. The point I'm making is it's a legal process and it is their right. You may not like it, but it is their right. Now, where the problem arises in a country like ours is we want to see a situation where these rights are applicable across board. Where someone who doesn't have the means or doesn't have a position or influence will also get the same advantages. It's this disparity in advantages that are available within the law that causes this. Because so you feel, so long as I am a nobody, I am going to go to jail. And it is a justifiable position because you do not see people in high office going to jail. The best you can see is them spending time in remand where they usually fall sick. And then when they fall sick, they're taken to hospital. We are told they're taken to hospital. And then they're taken back to court looking as right as rain and looking really chirpy and happy. What am I saying? I am saying that these disagreements that we're having are good. The fact that the media is presenting them is the media doing their duty. It is good. It's in the public domain. We know. If there are arguments, supposed real, imagined or otherwise, between the DCI and the prosecutor, the DPP, good. If the DPP has an issue with the judiciary, good. These debates, this is how you see the exercise of law. This is how you see how legal processes are put into action when they're questioned, when they're tested, this is how you see it. Now, we need to understand that this is the reality of following the law. It will not move at the pace you would wish or want it to move. It simply doesn't.
There are other things that are changed or amended in law when it's clear that the process is not taking its proper course.
No, it's not giving you the desired results.
It's not giving you the desired results. We've seen that legislation has been changed at that level. This argument did not come up yesterday. It has been there over and over again, where the judiciary has been called the bottleneck. In this case, we see that DPP is being called the bottleneck by the DCI and saying that we're not able to move forward regardless of the number of cases that we bring forward. Legislation has been changed in other cases, other matters in the country in order to give the desired results. These desired results we are seeing, and it is clear across board for the people of Kenya, these are the desired results. That people who have been suspected, charges levied against them for alleged crimes that they have committed, then should go through the court process, they be convicted, sent to jail. That across board is the general sentiment coming from Kenyans. That is what people want to see.
They can want all they want.
Now,
believe me, the moment you throw in aspects of the law into it, what they want will probably not see the light of day.
This is what I am saying, that those then involved in the process, there is something that they are gaining by not even making the suggestion that something within the legislation of the laws of the laws of the land could change or could be altered to make sure that we see speed, to make sure that we see some kind of alacrity when it comes to these things, because these things are going to be tied up in the illegal process for years. It could be that some people who are alive now will see their grandchildren before some of these things come to the light of day.
If they don't die before then, that is. Look, it was reported on page 9 of the Standard that MPs were ordered to return 19 million in total paid for UN trip. Each had been budgeted, for each individual they had budgeted 120,000. Good. I am waiting to read a report that they returned the money.
That they actually did return the money?
Yes. By the same token, when we talk about judicial processes, there are what you call civil cases which are not necessarily criminal. And this was pointed to us clearly by the Director General, the CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. We don't hear of asset recovery, or we don't hear of amounts that are actually recovered. And yet, we do know that in reality, we do have a law that provided for amnesty for people to return money that they had abroad into the country. Mm-hmm. It actually
exists.
Yes. Yeah. And there are estimates as to how much of that money was returned. It's in the trillions, I am told. Okay? Now, it isn't advertised. People don't talk about it. But it would be good for the morale of the country if people understood that in this period of time, this is what we have done. Mm-hmm. We have recovered houses worth this. We have closed bank accounts and recovered monies from them worth this. People feel, aha, work is being done. But we get it in snippets, in bits and pieces. Now, the issue of interference that we're told of, it is true that one can't be advertised because then it goes against the very spirit of what you're trying to do. But there's a lot that is done that we're not told. Now, if it isn't told often enough, despite asking to be told, then we will come to the conclusion that these things, so here's a whitewash, window dressing. These things are not actually done. You can't have the sort of pilferage that amounts to trillions on a yearly basis, because that's what it is really. And then you're telling us it is legal, nothing can be done? No. The economy is crawling on its knees. Surely this calls for the very thing you've been saying, that set up special courts.
Absolutely.
Let's speed up this process.
Let's talk about added, because that's what addendum is, added legislation that allows this thing to go through a lot quicker than it has been happening now. Because we have people that are not just about people who are complaining. What did the office of the DCI say? We're looking at people's rights, and in terms of their right to have speedy trials, because that's what we're talking about now, isn't it? And
yes,
saying that, it's a right. It is a right of someone to have and have these issues addressed. Coming out of the office of the DCI, that these cases are touching on people and their rights, and they need urgent action. Because if that becomes the conversation, that people's rights then are not being protected by virtue of the fact that these cases are taking forever, that's another whole kettle of fish that you really don't want to have to deal with. When now you want to throw human rights into all of this and say your right to a fair and speedy trial, of course, another thing that is entrenched in law, how do you play one vis-a-vis the other? These are things that have to be taken into consideration. An amendment to the law, I think at this point, when we continue to look towards solution, is something that needs to happen, because we're going to be talking about this thing year in, year out, and it's going to be years. Well, the legal process takes time, especially when we're talking about a battery of lawyers and a load of information, truckloads of files then that need to be brought in and scrutinized word by word. Counts. I mean, we're talking about a charge sheet that you want it possible to take 3 days to go through a charge sheet for 15 individuals in one organization. These are some of the things that we're talking about. When will you finish mentioning a case? Easily takes how long?
Unfortunately, if we look at the field, the legal field, and all the actors in it, and what is going on, one is forced to start thinking, okay, God forbid that it should be the case, but one sees the possible collusion. How can this mess just continue unabated? But the truth is, it's not unabated. It is abated. It's just that there's the question of it being reported as regularly as it happens. There's the issue of us understanding what takes place from the time someone is arrested to the time that they actually get jailed, if they can get jailed. There is that. But even that having been said, one has to start thinking, are we being taken for a ride here? And all these people who are in these offices are playing a very big game to keep us happy by trying to tell us that they're actually doing their jobs and they're not. Because options to ensure these things are speeded up exist. Why are they not being speeded up?
Maybe we can look at that. We can look at that a little bit further, because I think it has some merit to ask the question: is, are we then being taken for a ride by the offices that have been tasked with responsibility to make sure that some of these things actually happen? We're taking a break. It's about 9:45. We'll be back in a bit.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation. This city, at that point, I think we looked at it.
Mornings.
Because the thing is, something can be done. And are these folks actually taking us for a ride? Because it can't be the same story over and over again. Well, process. You ask a question and what is thrown at you is process.
We've understood it.
We get it, that it takes some time. But then realizing that it takes so much time to have some of these big cases then brought to book, as it were, then there must be something that you can do about it to change this.
It exists. So the question you're asking goes beyond the judiciary. The normal dance partners, DCI, DTP, judiciary, it goes beyond them. Because for certain things to become law, Parliament has to be involved. And the executive have to be involved because money comes from them. But the authority to expend money, do this, comes from Parliament. So you have to pause and ask, when they talk about these negotiated settlements, are we seeing other negotiated settlements that are not really in the media? Because one, MPs have also been accused. Members of the executive have been accused. Members of the judiciary have been accused. We've even seen some being dragged to jail. So if it isn't the actual officers or it isn't a collusion of that body or that department, then who in their midst are causing these delays? Because there are things that can be done and they're not being done, and there must be a plausible answer given to the citizens of this country. It can't be that you're spending money for something that doesn't need to take the length of time this one takes. It can't be that it wasn't known that the case against Manduku was what it was. Some of these things, the explanation given may sound plausible, but it is not reasonable. Because it is something you've heard over and over and over and over again with the same results.
Something's got to give at some point whereby, it's going to burst at its seams, because it cannot continue in this way. Now, when we say that the fight against corruption has taken some very positive steps in the last 1.5 years, things have been done where you would never ever imagine that they would happen. Some of the high profile arrests that we've seen, charge sheets that we've seen from governors to cabinet secretaries, etc., across board having happened. But then that's where it stops. Then I would at this point say then again, the fight against corruption seems to now be limping. It's not running as fast as it were, as it should have been. And somebody needs to sit up and take notice, because there was the clamor. If we look at the early 2000s going to the mid 2000s, a lot of development partners say, yeah, okay, we're going to help and we're going to hold your hand with this. But this thing, this vice, this corruption thing is something that you're going to have to work on. The argument could be, in many cases, that, all right, we're going to step up this fight against corruption in order to make sure that we're in good books with our development partners, right? Because that was one of the conditions that came along with this aid or this help or assistance, that, get this fight against corruption, get it on course, and let's see that you're actually doing something. Because a lot of the money that is being drained from your economy is because of the fact that people are corrupt and putting their hands in the cookie jar, in the country's cookie jar, and it should not be. Now, if we're going to help, we need to make sure that you're plugging those holes. Now, unfortunately, it could be seen that here you are fighting corruption to fulfill certain conditions, but you actually don't have the will to get it done, and it's evident then in the things that we see. If it is seen to be serious, the only way that it can be seen to be serious and be seen that we're actually making gains, of course the gains can be seen that we've done so far. We talk about the high profile arrests and such, but making gains whereby you're moving from one place to the next clearly is that if the law is what is stopping you from doing the things that then it can be clear to people that we've made a gain, change that law, amend that law, add something to that law, then that makes it possible for this job that you're doing be seen more clearly. Otherwise, it's just ducks swimming around a pool and you can never see what their legs are doing underwater. That's what we're dealing with here, unfortunately.
When you come from a history where people have been known to trade favors, this isn't a Kenyan thing. It's the world over. Scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. I have this problem, but if you want mine to go away, let your... It cannot possibly be that the two of us sitting in this room are the only ones who are thinking this. I'm sure there are many other Kenyans who have seen this and asked. But more importantly, there are others who actually know what can be done and should be done. And some even know why it isn't being done. We cannot move forward with pronouncements from our so-called external partners telling us we're doing a good job. By which standards? African standards as they perceive them, or their own standards? Because, yes, when a development partner from the West pats you on the back, don't assume that you've suddenly become an equal.
No.
Essentially, you're being told by your thieving African standards,
good boy,
you're doing you're stealing less than the others. Good, yes. And at least people are going to court. This is good. It's not enough. This thing must come to an end. Because the country is on its knees. Our economy is on its knees for this very simple reason. That we've been robbed to the position where we can't stand straight. We have to sort of function from our knees.
On our knees.
And yet we know what's happening. We even know the perpetrators of these things. And you're telling us that we have a judicial process. You have an entire process that seems incapable of doing it, of ensuring that this thing is moved forward. It is not true.
The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. In this case, the spirit is not even willing. And that's what we see here. That because if it was willing, when you want to do something, when you want to be not just be seen, but it is the reality that something is being done, there is nothing that will stop you from getting it done.
When you say the spirit is not willing, it's like saying that, well, the spirit could actually be convinced to be willing. No. Here the spirit is in opposition.
Fighting directly.
Yes, it is opposing it. It's not even willing. And if it's willing, the body will follow suit. It will also be unwilling. Yes. There was a case that we had, and we talked about it at great length, about the impeachment of the president of the U.S., Donald Trump. And it was interesting to observe the process it followed and the drama that went with it. That the discussion could get to a point where a president is actually being impeached, meaning he's being told, we want to see if you have a case that you could answer. That in itself is a deterrent. We seem to think that there are certain people in the country whom you cannot sort of like impeach. Now, the truth of the matter is that you don't need 10 governors to be impeached. One. That's why I said it is not as though they are not working. There's a bottleneck around the area where they could work as efficiently as they want. And this one, they seem to be just moving around this particular point. If one governor can be impeached, a second one can be impeached, and a third, and so forth. More importantly, they can go to jail. Having said what I have said at great length, generally speaking, if you want to know my honest views, people will go to jail. Forget the impeachments, yes. We're going to see governors going to jail. Despite all these things we keep hearing back and forth. We're going to see ministers going to jail. They will go to jail. We'll see permanent secretaries going to jail, actually going to jail. Despite all these things that we're seeing, they'll go to jail. And why do I say this? That despite this discussion, the vast majority of Kenyans in this country are honest, not just God-fearing, but law-abiding people who actually want the truth and they want honesty. They want their lives to be governed by things that are just and true. But where they fail, where we fail, where I fail, we tend to keep quiet even when things are wrong. We don't raise our voices often enough. So in so doing, we seem to be giving an okay to the wrong.
Well, I think the applause. I think that we have many a Kenyan at that point whereby we say historically something like this has never happened, where you see such high-profile arrests. So never. I think Kenyans have been left in a state of constant applause that, wow, okay, this could actually happen. In my lifetime, I'm seeing something like this where a sitting governor could be arrested, when I'm seeing a sitting CS or whomever in that high position could be arrested. So it's a state of wonderment and, wow, acclamation that something like this can actually happen. Before you now get to the next step where you say, all right, so then what happens next? And I think it's the what happens next question that is being asked across board right now and saying, okay, this is great that they've been arrested. They're out on bail or bond or whatever. But then what happens next? And it's that place, at this agitation where the bubbles now are connecting until we get to the boil over, whereby people are saying, okay, you know what? Something else needs to happen. Something more needs to happen at this point. Otherwise, then what was all that? It was fanfare to show us that something was going on. No, we actually need to see that results are coming forth because of this. And I think that if people then are serious about seeing that, we will see in a very short time that people will get a little bit more agitated and something will happen. Until that point, I don't see that any change will be made until the agitation then comes through in a convincing manner.
You are right, but let us say that certain changes. even as the media does a commendable job, and those who are involved in investigative journalism do an excellent job and bring out things that they should bring out, the noise, let me call it the conversation, because I like that word better. The conversation should be more towards solutions, as in set up special courts.
Set up special courts. I mean, just been reminded now that, it takes so long because somebody now saying, well, okay, I could steal today a couple millions, a couple billions, and it's going to take 20 years.
Yes.
It's going to take 20 years to convict me, if that. So, I might as well enjoy myself and keep my hands in the proverbial cookie jar for as long as I can. That's the problem. And you don't want to say that it takes so long, because then it gives people fodder to then be able to go further and steal some more. Something definitely needs to be done.
In the 1990s, there was one of the instruments of trading in the New York Stock Exchange, something called junk bonds. People made money from it. Among them was a gentleman by the name of Carl Icahn. That man made a bundle, but he had gone against the rules that are required to be adhered by when trading in this. Insider trading. He had information he shouldn't have used for his benefit, but he did. But what stood out for me about the case of this gentleman is this. He knew what charges would be levied against him. He knew the fines. He set aside the fines. So when the fines came, yes, he paid.
He was ready to pay.
Yes, a few 100 billion shillings, he paid. And whatever else was required, he paid. But he was still jailed.
He was still jailed at the end of the day.
He was still jailed.
And speaking at the end of the day, unpackage today's proverb for us, CT.
Well, what it simply means is this, If you have unrealistic expectations, one, they will not be realized, and two, you'll be disappointed. And if your expectations are huge, then your disappointments will be equally huge. A monkey believes that his bushy eyelashes cost him his beauty. He doesn't think of his height. He doesn't think of his ears. He doesn't think of his nose. He doesn't think of his arms. He focuses on his eyebrows. His entire body is bushy, but he focuses on the eyebrows.
The eyebrows.
If you have unrealistic expectations to solutions, you will not realize them and you will be disappointed. If they are greater, you'll be greatly disappointed. Yes. And if you have unrealistic explanations for situations that are real, then your disappointment will be profound, because what we've been discussing the whole day is looking at things in the way that we look at them, and we've been trying to focus on what they really are.
What the real thing is.
The real thing is not your bushy eyebrow. No, that's not the explanation. The real thing is that you may actually be beautiful. It's you who thinks that you're not beautiful.
Wow. How's that for unpackaging it? This has been Kenya's biggest conversation in the Situation Room today, CT. Until we meet again tomorrow, say goodbye.
The discussion continues.
The discussion continues. Thank you very much for keeping it here with us. Right after we close it out at the top of the hour, Spice Soul until 3 o'clock. And then Monique will take you home on the drive until 7 and open it up for the adults in the room to come in and talk about everything, relationships and issues having to do with the heart from 7 to 10. From now, enjoy Spice Soul until we meet again in the morning tomorrow. Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Ndruko and I've been here with CT Muga. The conversation definitely does continue about things that we see important, or definitely looking at the underbelly of issues. We keep talking, we keep digging, we keep checking.